Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku learned ninjutsu? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Nizu was not often surprised. The way his mind worked, he was used to being about 15 steps ahead of any situation, and after the USJ attack he was sure nobody would be able to sneak within 20 feet of any UA property, let alone his own office, without his knowledge. However, when he came back from his weekly meeting with Aizawa about Aries development, he found someone in his chair with 2 cups of what smelled like jasmine tea. "Hello, Nizu," the stranger said with a small smile and slight bow as he stood up from the rat-bear-thing's chair. "A pleasure to finally meet you. My name is Adam Karzan. I'm a multiversal traveler and I'd like to discuss something I think would greatly benefit both you and your students. Please, have some tea. I learned to make it from one of the best tea makers in the multiverse." Nizu looked the stranger up and down. He was of average height and build with short brown curly hair and a goatee. On his forehead above his calm eyes were a pair of blue goggles, and he wore black jeans and boots and a shirt of All Might saying, "Smile, darn ya, smile." Over this was a long gray coat with various pins and buttons with symbols and sayings like "Mutie's Rule" and "Bite Me, Fanboy." He also wore a belt with many pockets and gadgets adorning it. Overall, he had a very trusting presence about him that Nizu thought might be a little too trusting. Nizu smiled. "Well, Karzan-sama, you must understand why I'm a little hesitant about taking a drink from an intruder in my personal office. How exactly did you get in without mine or my staff's knowledge?" "Of course," Karzan said. "I understand your concerns, but I assure you, I'm no threat. As I said, I'm a multiversal traveler. I'm sure you're familiar with the multiverse theory, which you can now confirm as scientific law, so I won't bother explaining it. I was given the knowledge and power to traverse and study various universes and make sure nothing happens to threaten one or more of them. As such, I have picked up several bits of tech and learned many techniques from my travels that make me undetectable to even the most advanced security. If you think Powerloader security is top-notch, you should try breaking into the Baxter building of U-261A. Nizu nodded and made his way to his desk. After a slight hesitation, he took the cup and a small sip. Honestly, he could taste the love put into what many would consider nothing more than hot leaf juice. Delicious. If what you say is true, you must tell me if there is a version of your TMSTR in my world." Nizu said happily. Karzan smiled. "I'll be sure to look into it, but he might already be dead. Each universe is set in its own time, so while it's 2153 here, the universe I met my MSTR in didn't even have electricity yet. Anyway, the reason why I wanted to meet you is to show you and a few of your students and staff a certain universe I think you would enjoy and might be able to learn from. It'll be presented to you and your students as a series, and if you enjoy it, I could possibly show you other universes more connected to your own with possible futures or pasts." Nizu considered this. "Interesting. I would of course have to see this first so I know if it's appropriate for my students, but after everything that's happened recently, I suppose they could do with some entertainment." "Great," Karzan said. "I'll fire up the first episode and give you a basic summary. Oh, but if you decide to show more to your class, I'd only like one thing from you." The next day, Aizawa, All Might and Present Mike were waiting in the common room with Class 1A along with Mei, Shinso, Eri, and the Big Three for the Rat-Bear-Dog principal. He said they were going to be watching something interesting from the pre-quirk era and would explain more once everyone was comfortable. Everyone turned to the entrance as Nizu and someone in a gray coat walked in, talking about some pest hopefully changing, but the stranger didn't seem hopeful. He and Nizu then stood in front of the class and Nizu began. "Hello, everyone. While you don't know my species, you all obviously know me as your principal, and I'd like to introduce you to a guest of mine. His name is Adam Karzan and he will be showing you events from another universe." Everybody paused before a barrage of questions and disbelief were thrown towards the stranger. "Enough," Aizawa said with a glare, and everyone shut up. "Thanks, Pap Aizawa," said Karzan with a smile, earning a small glare from Aizawa and a chuckle from Mike. "Anyway, like your principal said, I am a multiversal traveler and have gathered intel, tech and allies from various universes and have even met different versions of yourselves. I've seen everything from a quirkless Midoriya becoming a well-respected vigilante to a 25-year-old Bakugo who's a single dad, and before you start, Sparky Boom Boy, this is one of an infinite number of possible futures. It's not necessarily your future. The F you just call M-, Aizawa wrapped Bakugo in his capture weapon until he calmed down. He then tisk-ed and looked away. Like he'd ever be some shitty dad. Midoriya then raised his hand while opening a notebook and started jotting down each question as he asked it. Karzan-san, does this mean that the multiverse theory has been confirmed? How are you able to travel to different universes? Is it your quirk or some kind of technology? Are there others doing the same thing or are you alone? Do you have some way of labeling universes after visiting them or some kind of map so you don't visit the same one unless you want to? What happened to your universe? Is the universe you're going to be showing us about alternate versions of ourselves? Midoriya was cut off by a whistle from Karzan. Easy, Midoriya, Karzan said with a chuckle. Yes, the multiverse is real. I and others were gifted the ability to travel between universes by a cosmic being in order to make sure each universe is functioning the way it should and report or try to fix any problems that could threaten said universe or even the entire multiverse as a whole. My universe is fine, but I left out of boredom and don't really need to return since my base of operations is a ship I stole from one of the first universes I traveled to. Mei and Ida both spoke up. You have a ship? You stole a ship? Anyway, Karzan said, ignoring both of them, the universe I'll be showing you will be presented to you as a series and I've shown some scenes to your principal and he agrees you'll find it fascinating. It takes place in a pre-quirk New York City and follows 4 teenage brothers taught by their father the ways of ninjutsu to protect their city from an evil ninja clan known as the Foot, as well as street gangs, shady government organizations and even aliens and other supernatural threats. Any more questions before we begin? Ida's hand quickly shot up. Why are you not sharing such information with the rest of the school or at the very least the other hero courses? Why have we been selected specifically? Honestly, you guys have had a tough few months and I think you deserve some entertainment. Also, Shinso and Mei are here cause I like Shinso and I'm sure Aizawa will agree that these 4 operate like underground heroes so their techniques could serve as inspiration for him and I can't wait to see Mei's reaction to some of the babies one of the brothers makes, Karzan said, looking at Mei who was grinning wildly at the implications. Eri was next to shakily raise her hand and quietly ask, It's not going to be scary, is it? So fraggin' cute, Karzan thought. Out loud, he answered, honestly, there will be 1 or 2 times you might feel uncomfortable but I'll be sure to warn you ahead of time. Actually, there's one episode in particular I think would be better if you skipped but that won't be for a while so you don't have to worry, sweetie. I'm sure Deku will be more than happy to make you feel safe, Eri smiled. Nijire then started bouncing on the ball of her feet. How long will this take? Should we get snacks? Maybe some pizza? How will we be watching this? Will we be able to watch these again in private? Well, in total, the whole series is made up of 116 episodes at around 23 minutes apiece so it'll take more than 1 session to get through it, Karzan said. As for snacks, he then pressed a button on his watch and several pizzas, sodas, and snacks suddenly appeared on the dining table. I've got it covered. Also, yes, I will provide copies of the episodes we've watched after every session for those who want them. Any last questions? Kirishima raised his hand. Principal Nizu, where's Mineta? Karzan and Nizu shared a smile. Earlier that morning. Minoru Mineta, due to various reports of SXL harassment and attempted assault, you are hereby removed from UA's hero course. You will have the chance to reapply after 6 months of therapy and have proven you are able to control yourself, Nizu said with a smile. Mineta's eyes widened. Fu dash. After opening on a view of New York City, the focus shifts to a manhole cover and pans down into the sewer, where we can hear an old voice talking about how true ninja must avoid the light and become one with the darkness. Revelry in the dark, said Tokoyami. Wait, they're in the sewer? Gross, Mina said with a shudder. Actually, it's a pretty smart hiding space if you can get past the smell, said Aizawa. Guaranteed privacy, access to different routes, probably some forgotten entrances into buildings too. It's also ideal for evading capture. It's easy for someone unfamiliar with the layout to get lost, said All Might, remembering the day he first met young Midoriya and how one wrong turn almost made him too late to save him. A shot of a candle then zooms out to reveal MSTR Splinter challenging his students to extinguish the candle without being seen. What? Said most of the room, questioning how if this was set in a world without quirks there was someone with such an obvious rat mutation quirk. Karzan smiled. Oh, yeah. I told you they were ninjas but forgot to mention that the main characters were turtles who were mutated and are now teenagers, or mutant ninja turtle teens, while their MSTR is an old rat named Splinter. Sorry. And for those wondering, their origin will be explained in a later episode. Midoriya put down his hand and started listing theories as to how they were mutated that ranged from illegal experiments by the American government to alien involvement, which even Midoriya admitted was probably a stretch. The first to attempt, who has a purple mask, fails and goes flying into a wall, dropping their bow staff. Too noisy, Donatello, said Splinter. The next one with an orange mask and using nunchucks doesn't fare any better and is thrown into the first. Too clumsy, Michelangelo. While the rest of the room flinched and Bakugo laughed at the two basically diving into a wall, Aizawa smiled. He already knew who his favorite character was going to be. Principal Nizu also smiled, knowing Aizawa would be using some of Splinter's lessons in his class. The third had a red mask and tried lunging from behind, and after he misses, decides to charge Splinter with his sais but is then tripped by his MSTR's walking stick and sent rolling into the other two. Poor choice, Raphael. Well, at least he tried attacking from behind before charging him like an idiot, said Shinso. Bet I could sneak up on him, said Hagakure. I don't think so, Hagakure, said Midoriya. He's a ninja MSTR with advanced hearing and sense of smell, so it'd be pretty much impossible to sneak up on him like they've been trying. How do you mean, Deku? Asked Uraraka. He means they're not utilizing their environment, Aizawa said. They're trying to use speed and brute force rather than sticking to the shadows and waiting for an opening. Above Splinter, clinging to two pipes, a fourth figure quickly jumps down and slices the candle in half, with the top half landing on his katana, revealing a blue masked turtle before he blows out the flame. Like that, Aizawa deadpanned. So that's the fourth brother, Midoriya said while writing down his description. Such speed and skill, Ida said. A true warrior of the darkness, said Tomoyami. This one uses swords. So manly. Kirishima said. Yeah, gotta say I'd rather have a sword than a stick or the forks the red guy has, Kaminari said. I barely trust you with a butter knife, let alone a sword, said Jairu to Kaminari, who frowned. Splinter turns the lights back on while praising Leonardo, to Raphael's annoyance. Splinter then reminds them that because the world would reject and fear them, they must MSTR ninjutsu and never be discovered. Can't say I blame them for hiding, Shuji said. Yeah, ribbit, said Tsu. Even today we heteromorphs can have it rough. I guess these guys are like this world's first generation. How do you mean? Asked Kaminari. Let's not get into it, young Kaminari, said All Might, sadly. Just know that not many parents were eager to raise a child with a mutation quirk, if given the chance before the doctors called the government. Kaminari's eyes widened. Maybe he should pay more attention in history. Suddenly, the room they're in starts shaking and a bunch of small robots with sharp teeth chomp their way through the wall, and the Turtles and Splinter take their battle stances. May's eyes twinkled. Look at those babies. They ate through that wall like it was nothing. I gotta make one. While she started sketching their design, Present Mike turned to the principal and asked, should we warn Power Loader? Nizu chuckled. Now where would be the fun in that? While Mikey joked they were New York City cockroaches, Raph was the first to attack. Kirishima grinned. Yeah. Finally some action. It's just them fighting some stupid robots, Bakugo grumbled, though he did like how Red was the first to attack. No. Not the babies. May sobbed. While the Turtles were doing well against them, they saw Splinter being cornered by the robots and tried to help him. As they were making their way towards Splinter, other robots were eating away at the ceiling and support beams in the tunnel and causing the ceiling to collapse, cutting the Turtles off from Splinter. I hope Splinter's okay, said Midoriya. Of course he's okay, nerd, said Bakugo. It's only the first fucking episode. While Raph finished off the last of the robots on their side, Donnie was calling Splinter on a communicator called a shell cell. On Splinter's side, he woke up to his device ringing and tried pressing the buttons to answer it, even though he already did. OMG. He's such a dad, laughed Mina and Toru. Meh. Cute baby for the time, but my phone's way better, said May, as she turned back to a pile of wires and metal that started to look like one of those robots. Tarzan was impressed how well she was doing with the box of scraps he teleported next to her. Can't wait to see what she does when she sees the sword of Tengu, he thought. Splinter then tells them to meet him at an old drainage tunnel. After Raphael shoves Michelangelo for being annoying, they make their way down another tunnel only to find it has collapsed as well. With nowhere to go, Raphael decides to go above ground and then down the next manhole, though Leonardo is hesitant. With no other options, the others follow Raphael. Ida was the first to speak up. I agree with Leonardo. Their MSTR clearly told them not to leave the sewers. Couldn't they have at least tried to clear away the debris? Too risky and it'd take too long, said Aizawa. One wrong piece of rubble out of place and they could be in even worse trouble. Besides, more of those robots could come back. Plus, they're ninjas, Kaminari said. I'm sure they know how to stay hidden. Raphael went ahead and managed to stay hidden until he found the manhole they needed to get to. Unfortunately, a large armored van parked on top of it and Raph kicked it out of anger, much to the annoyance of Leo and the others. Kaminari facebombed. Hot-headed idiot, said Aizawa, pinching the bridge of his nose. Yeah, I'm not really an expert on stealth, but kicking a van in anger doesn't seem very stealthy me, said Sato. What, you never get angry, sugar extra? Asked Bakugu, defensively. Yeah, but even I know when to turn down the volume on a stealth mission, you dig, said Present Mike, rather loudly. When was the last time you were ever on a stealth mission? Aizawa questioned with a smirk. Shut up, said Mike. After the others refuse to give Raph a hand, though Mikey nearly claps before Raph shuts him down, he decides to try pushing it himself. Ugh. I'm really starting to hate Orange, Bakugu growled. Mr. Karzan, do they have super strength? Asked Izuku, who was on Raphael's page. Well, somewhat, said Kazan, while their mutations and training make them a bit stronger than most humans, they're not as strong as, say, Death Arms. Izuku blinked. And he's going to try to push a giant, parked van by himself? Yeah, Raph is not the brains of the group, Karzan admitted. As Raph starts to try to push the van, he and the others hear voices coming from the building the owners of the van entered. Raph panics and jumps into the van to hide, leaving his brothers disappointed and annoyed at his poor choice. Case in point, said Karzan. Damn it, Red, shouted Bakugu. The 5 owners of the van then come out of the building carrying duffel bags and laughing about how scared their victims were when they robbed them. They then threw the duffel bags in the back of the van and locking it with Raphael clinging to the ceiling. So these are the villains? Asked Izuku as he turned to a fresh page. Yup. The Purple Dragons, Karzan explained. Their second biggest gang in New York and their leader is the right-hand man of the series' main villain. And that is? Jairu asked. You'll see. Gotta admit, I like the logo, Kaminari said, while Izuku began copying the dragon symbol on the largest thug's shirt. The turtles then begin following the van on the rooftops. Meanwhile, Splinter makes it to the old drainage junction. While wondering where his sons could be, the floor starts to crack. 2 more robots break through the ground. Yay! The baby's live. May shouted happily. And look! Mine works, too. She then turned on an almost perfect replica of one of them and it began chomping at the couch, much to the others' dismay. Young Hatsum. That is UA property your mechanical monster is destroying. May, please turn it off. Damn it, someone get Powerloader to wrangle his problem child. My soda, complained Kaminari as it spilled on the robot. Before anyone could do anything else, it then sparked and exploded. Well, that was neat, said Karzan, calmly as he hit another button on his watch. The couch then began repairing itself. May then eyed the watch greedily. You will reveal the secrets of your baby, mystery man, she thought. We then cut back to the van, which has parked and the leader of the thugs tells the biggest one, named 2-Ton, to guard it. As he paces, he hears a can and goes to check on the noise. He sees nothing but Mikey taps him on the shoulder, whispering that this is a no parking zone. He then gives him a ticket and a fine in the form of a kick, knocking him out. Ha! I love Mikey, laughed Kaminari. TSK. You would, dunceface, said Bakugu. Hey, he's pretty funny, defended Mina. Let me guess, your favorite is the impatient hothead, right? So what if it is, Raccoon Eyes? Calm down, everyone, said Karzan. I'll be asking for everyone's favorite at the end of this first episode. For now, just enjoy. Mina then stuck out her tongue at Bakugu who glared at her, then turned back to the TV. The turtles then notice how advanced the lock on the back of the van is and Donatello pulls out 2 screwdrivers and gets to work on it. While he does, Raph is banging on the door and Mikey is egging him on, until Raph punches it especially hard and Donnie tells them to knock it off. Man, I can't wait for Purple to let Raph out, Bakugu grinned, knowing that Mikey was in for a world of pain when Raph was free. So Donatello is the smart one, mumbled Izuku, going back to Donnie's page. Okay, so if I have this right, Leonardo's the leader, Donatello's the brains, Raphael's the brawn, and Michelangelo's dash. The annoying dumbass, we get it, Deku, Bakugu interrupted. He's just being thorough, Bakubro, said Kirishima. You know better than anyone how much effort he puts into his analysis stuff. Does he now, thought Nizu. We then cut back to Splinter figging off more robots before cutting back to Donnie finally unlocking the van and Raph tackling Michelangelo, the noise attracting the attention of the other purple dragons. And once again, the hothead gets them in trouble, said Jairu. Oh, come on. He deserved it, complained Bakugu. While I won't say Michelangelo wasn't deserving of punishment, I would urge each and every one of you to save all personal vendettas until after a mission was completed, said Nizu, pouring another cup of tea from a teapot with a green dragon on it. We then see each of the turtles showing off with their weapons before they all jump forward and we cut to the gang members being thrown onto a pile one by one before running away. After Donnie comments how easy that was and Raph says he hopes there were more of them, several other ninjas then jump from the roof above and surround them. Okay, Raph jinxing it isn't surprising, but I thought Donnie was supposed to be the smart one, said Zero, exasperated. So I take it while these aren't purple dragons, they're somehow involved, asked Aizawa. Yeah, these are the Foot Clan, said Karzan. Remember when I said the purple dragons were the second largest gang? These are the first and are made up of more than just street punks with chains and bats. Kaminari chuckled. The Foot? Seriously? What, was the hand taken? Actually, yes, said Karzan. Oh, said Kaminari, dumbstruck. Donatello is the first to attack and seems to be doing well, until a few of his opponents get back up. We then see Raph complimenting his 3 opponents on their moves as he dodges them before taking out all 3. Leo then finds himself struggling, using both katanas to block his opponent's swords. Michelangelo and Donnie are then kicked into the side of the van before taking cover inside to avoid shuriken that embed the door. Bakugo couldn't help grinning as his favorite turtle was having the easiest time with his opponents while the others struggled. Raph is pretty manly, huh, Bakubro? Kirishima asked. Hell yeah. He doesn't even need the other idiots. And yet without those other idiots, he'd still be locked in the back of the van, said Nizu. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, young Bakugo, said All Might. While young Raphael seems to have brute strength, Leonardo seems faster and more disciplined and young Donatello is smarter. TSK. And Orange? Bakugo asked, sneering. We have yet to see young Michelangelo truly shine, but I'm sure he will, said All Might, rubbing the back of his head. Ojiro winced at how Raph wrongly named those attacks but kept his mouth shut. He knew the others wouldn't care. Meanwhile, Splinter has destroyed the robots that attacked him but then falls through the floor. Mr. Splinter, Eri cried out. Calm down, runt. Like I told the nerd, the old rat's fine, said Bakugo, a little softer than normal. This didn't go unnoticed as Uraraka smiled. Guess even he has a soft spot for her, she thought. We see Splinter sliding and rolling down a tunnel and end up in another part of the sewer. He then starts walking until a bright light catches his attention and we see it coming from a large doorway. Back with the turtles, they're finding themselves being overrun with foot ninja and make a break for it as soon as Donnie hotwires the van. As Mikey reflects on the events of the day, Raph decides to open up one of the duffel bags to find it full of stolen money. While Mikey's tempted to keep it, Leo throws the bags out the window at a couple of parked cops before driving away. Not saying I wouldn't be tempted too, but how is Mikey even expecting to spend that money? Asked Zero. I dunno. Disguises? Kirishima answered. Yeah, like what? Bakugo asked. It's gonna take more than a trench coat and fedora to disguise a giant FING turtle buying a plasma TV with cash, dumbass. I don't know, young Bakugo, said All Might, with a chuckle. You'd be amazed at how little Americans notice. The turtles then drive the van into the drainage tunnel and meet up with Splinter, both happy to see each other. Splinter then tells them to follow him to their new home, jumping down the tunnel he fell in earlier. Leo and Donnie follow him and Michelangelo is halfway through a cowabunga when Raph shoves him down the hole. Not funny, Raph. Oh, yes it is, said Bakugo and Raph in tandem. After all 4 join him at the bottom, Splinter tells them to walk this way, and Mikey mimics the way he walks only to get hit on the head by Donnie's staff. Huh. Purple has officially become my second favorite. Bakugo laughed. Oh, come on, that was funny. Kaminari tried defending Mikey's joke. While I disagree with how Donatello reprimanded him, he should not be mocking his sensei, said Ida, briskly chopping. Pfft. It's not like we haven't done it before, murmured Kaminari. Unfortunately, Aizawa heard him and activated his quirk. Care to elaborate, Kaminari? He asked, menacingly. Kaminari stiffened up and stuttered out a "No, sensei," before turning his attention back to the show. The turtles then enter their new lair, with Splinter saying change is good and Leo agreeing. Splinter then tells them to start cleaning up for a change. Meanwhile, the lead purple dragon thug from earlier is explaining his failure to a very intimidating-looking man and begging for forgiveness, promising to never fail him again. The man agrees, rising, and as the doors to his office close, we can hear the dragon leader screaming while the man laughs as it's revealed the skyscraper therein has the symbol of the Foot Clan on it. The room was silent. Even Midoriya stopped writing mid-sentence at the sound of the evil laughter that closed the episode. Well, on that ominous note, let's take a 10-minute bathroom break before I start the Q&A, Karzan said, pausing the TV before the next episode could begin. After finishing his slice of pepperoni and marshmallow pizza with clam juice, Karzan got up to address the room. So, I take it you guys enjoyed the first episode? Their response was a mix of nods and sounds of agreement as well as a few questions about the villain at the end of the episode. Good to hear, he said. Now, while some of you were more vocal about your opinions during the episode, I'd like to get some first impressions from the rest of the group. Tell me what you liked, didn't like, hope to see in upcoming episodes, and favorite character. Who wants to go first? While some like Mina and Nijire were practically jumping in their seats with their hands raised, Karzan decided to go with someone who didn't have their hand up. Eeny, meeny, miny, you, he said as he pointed at All Might, which caught him off guard and caused a small, bloody cough. After Karzan handed him a handkerchief, he began. Well, I thought this was a great introduction to a group of young reluctant heroes. I suppose along with young Raphael working on his temper, young Leonardo could also work on his leadership skills since Raph took the lead in this episode. He was the first to go above ground and decided to take it upon himself to push a heavily armored van which ended with him locked in said van. We can see they have a strong family dynamic and I hope this continues to improve their teamwork. I suppose for now, Leonardo is my favorite. Karzan nodded. Thanks, AM. He then turned his attention to present Mike. Yo, those turtle teens sure know how to put on a show, yelled the voice hero, earning him a glare from Aizawa. Loved seeing them slicing and dicing those bots, and that Splinter is a radical rat. Can't wait to see more of him, but my fave had to be that party dude, Mikey. As irrational as some of their decisions were, started Aizawa, rubbing his ear while glaring at Mike, I suppose it's to be expected given how young they are and this was their first time above ground. However, Raphael was definitely the most at fault. This statement earned him a glare from Bakugu, which he ignored. Had he gone on to find the next nearest manhole instead of trying to push a parked van, this whole mess could have been avoided. While what they did in taking down the gang members would be considered vigilantism in our world, I have to admit they did well in stopping a dangerous group of individuals and returning the money. I hope to see more of Splinter's lessons in future episodes. He ended his turn with a smirk and his students all felt a shiver go up their spines. But would they, Aizawa? Nizu asked. Would they what? Would they be guilty of vigilantism? After all, for one to be charged with vigilantism you must have evidence that they stopped a crime using their quirk without a hero license. However, these individuals do not have quirks, they are simply different looking. By your logic, if Tokoyami were to stop a mugging without the use of dark shadow, he could still be arrested for vigilantism for having a head that resembles a bird, correct? That got a few in the room thinking and Izuku went into a muttering daze. Aizawa just sighed and muttered, well, regardless, I could still arrest them for indecent exposure. It took a second for those that heard him to come to the same realization that, yes, the turtles were naked and some faces turned red but nobody else brought it up so Mirio decided to go next. I agree with present Mike. I loved the way they took down those robots, especially the part where Mikey threw one to Leo who sliced it so fast that it didn't fall apart until it hit the ground. That move is always cool. I'm tempted to favor Leo for his skill but Mikey's humor won me over. He then looked at Eri, who was sitting on his lap. How about you, Eri? Did you like it? Yeah, she yelled happily. The robots were scary at first but then seeing them explode was so cool. It was also funny seeing the bad guys run away. I got scared for Mr. Splinter a couple times but I'm glad he was okay. He's my favorite because he reminds me of Mr. Nizu. Karzan looked at Nizu who couldn't help but smile. Well, Splinter and Nizu do have a lot in common. They're both smart and care about their students and God help whoever messes with their kids. Karzan and Nizu shared a sinister laugh. Anyway, Nijire? Got anything T-dash? That was amazing. Leonardo is my favorite. But why did those robots attack them? Who built those? Does someone know where they are? Is it that scary guy at the end? Did he kill that blue-haired guy? Did the turtles steal that van? How old are they? I know they're teenagers, but they could be between 13 and 20, so what's the official number? How do they get food? Do they just eat out of dumpsters? Why do they all have Italian names? Did anyone else notice they're all NAK-? And since Amajiki is going all Blair Witch over there, we'll move on, said Karzan. Jairu was the next to raise her hand while her other was twirling one of her jacks. I guess Donnie's my favorite. I like his fighting style and color. Also, I really liked the music, especially when they were following the van. Any chance of getting a copy of the soundtrack? Present Mike nodded in agreement. Don't have a copy on me but I'll see what I can do, Karzan answered. How about you, Aoyama? You were surprisingly quiet for someone who loves the spotlight. What can I say? Aoyama asked, with a dramatic flourish. It's depressing seeing such characters with such dazzling personalities forced to remain in the dark. But, that being said, I enjoyed Leonardo's shining sword skills. Karzan just shrugged. Fair enough. Who's next? Ribbit. Like I said, it's an interesting look at what it was probably like for those born with mutation quirks when they first appeared, said Tsuyu. My dad's told me stories about how his grandfather and others like him lived in the sewers most of their lives before different laws were put in place that recognized those with more extreme mutations like his as people. It's still not perfect, but it really makes me appreciate the time I was born in. Donatello was my favorite. Yeah, Shoji agreed. I may have faced my share of racism, but at least I still have basic rights. These guys don't even have that. However, like the old vigilantes of our world, that doesn't stop them from doing what's right. With that said, I like Leo. Mina was slightly surprised and a little uncomfortable by what Tsuyu said about her great-grandfather and how Shoji mentioned still encountering racism and hatred despite being one of the kindest souls in Class 1A and couldn't help feeling guilty about not realizing how good she'd had it. Her family wasn't wealthy, but her parents always made sure she and her sister were loved and had a roof over their heads and food on the table. She had been teased about her appearance when she was little, but it was never anything too bad, just kids being dumb, and while there were times she had to threaten to melt some faces off, she was usually able to win them over with her fun personality and killer dance moves. She still got a few stares from strangers every now and then, but nobody had ever shown signs of fear or hatred towards her, had they? The fighting was pretty cool, said Ojiro. I was surprised by Mikey's choice of weapons considering how difficult wielding nunchucks could be. I'd have thought he would have gone with the bow staff, but he had great technique. Same with everyone else, but I did like seeing Raph take out those 3 ninjas, even if he did get the names wrong, so he's my favorite for now. Yeah, Raph was definitely the most manly of them, said Kirishima. Not sure about the choice of weapon though. You'd think he'd use a kanabo or something, but he definitely knows how to use those sai. It is odd he would use a weapon more used for defense rather than offense, chimed in Yayorozu. Contrary to what many believe, sai aren't daggers and are mostly used for disarming sword users. Though, given his rivalry with Leonardo, I suppose that fits. While I agree Leonardo needs to work on his leadership skills, he is clearly dedicated to his family and is the most skilled out of his brothers. Indeed, Tokoyami agreed. Leonardo was the only one of his brothers to pass Splinter's test by truly becoming one with the darkness. Raph should replace Blue as the leader, declared Bakugu. He took charge when they went above ground and knows how to put Orange in his place. Idiot deserves it for antagonizing him. Hey, don't diss Mikey like that, shouted Mina. Yeah, he's just trying to lighten the mood, added Hagakure. Not his fault Raph can't take a joke, argued Kaminari. Besides, like Mr. Aizawa said, Raph was an idiot. Why would you try to push a giant, parked van? Even I know not to do that. Well, it's those villain extras' fault for parking on the DMN manhole cover. Before the argument could go any further, Karzan cut in. Alright. So far that's 6 for Leo, 5 for Mikey, 3 for Splinter because I already got Nizu's vote, 3 for Raph, and 2 for Donnie. May, care to dash? Don't care. Get on with it so I can get back to making babies. You said I'd like Purple's babies, and so far the only one I've seen is that one the rat was playing with, she shouted. Karzan's sweat dropped. How about you, Uraraka? Well, Donnie seems pretty cool, especially if he was able to make those communicators out of scraps in the sewers. Can't wait to see what he can do with that van. Cool. Wanna go next, Zamboso? Karzan addressed Shinso. Not liking the nickname, Shinso activated his quirk. I'm sorry, what did you just call me? Karzan smirked, and after pressing a button on his watch, a small holographic keyboard appeared and he began typing. Don't like Zamboso, a robotic voice answered. Alright, how about Purple Eraser? Or maybe Bags FO Days? I'll take Purple Eraser, Shinso sighed. It was cool how fast Donnie was able to bust open that lock, so I guess he's my favorite. And the fact he's the purple one has nothing to do with that, right? Joked Kaminari, to which the other boy glared at him. After turning off the keyboard, he chose Ida, whose hand had been raised for so long his arm was trembling. He quickly stood up straight and began robotically chopping his hand as he began. Thank you. I believe Leonardo to be the superior turtle. He was the only one to pass Splinter's test and was much more cautious than the others about going above ground. As class representative, I understand all too well the pressure of leadership and how frustrating it is when others refuse to follow directions and make an already bad situation worse by continuing to refuse to cooperate. When Ida took a second to glare at Bakugu, Karzan decided to test something he heard about from other travelers who met Ida. He produced a rather thick wooden board and held it under Ida's chopping hand. Wha-Ida exclaimed as he heard the sound of wood breaking. The room burst into laughter. Sorry, Hot Rod, said Karzan, still laughing. Couldn't resist. I heard a few of my coworkers did the same thing to other versions of you and had to see it. Ida began to blush, but then Midoriya spoke up. That was awesome, Ida. And you weren't even trying. I know your super moves are leg-based because of your quirk, but you should really talk to your brother about training your arms. Uraraka laughed. Yeah. Maybe you can ask Kendo for some help, too, since she has so much experience shutting up Monoma. An idea suddenly struck Mei and she began sketching a pair of gauntlets that can shift into different weapons, swords, axes, maybe even WHPS for capture or grappling up walls. You're right, Ida gasped. My arm chopping, as many call it, has been a subconscious habit for so long, yet I never considered honing and using it in hero work. Ida bowed deeply to Karzan. Thank you for opening my eyes, Karzan-sama. Happy to help, Karzan said, thinking he just thought it would be funny but glad he helped. I was surprised how agile they were, said Ciro. Given their turtles, it was impressive seeing them jump and flip from roof to follow that van. As for my fave, I gotta go with Mikey. I like Raph. He may not have been the most stealthy, but he's a hell of a fighter, said Sato. Kota softly said, I like TH. And they didn't think, Avrite is Splinter. Alright, who's left? Karzan asked. Todoroki raised his hand. I liked Splinter. You can tell he really cares for his sons. Figures, Karzan thought. Out loud, he clapped and said, alright, time for the one I've been looking forward to the most. Gimme your analysis, Small Might. Midoriya blushed at the nickname. Well, from what I've read and what Tsuyu said about her great-grandfather, the turtles operate like many with heteromorphic mutations that lived in our world at the time, and how many became accidental heroes and urban legends. While their initial goal was to simply find the next available manhole, they ended up fighting off a gang of thugs and throwing the money they stole to the police before quickly driving away. The same types of situations happened here. I recently read an old news article from the pre-quirk era where an American man was getting mugged and was saved by someone in a ratty hoodie and sweatpants. The vigilante threw the man's wallet back, saying not to thank him and how he only did it because they were in the way of his favorite dumpster behind a pizza place. As he started rummaging through the dumpster, the would-be victim noticed he seemed to be hunchbacked and what little he could see of his face was dash green. Karzan finished. Midoriya's eyes widened and looked at Karzan, who gave him a wink. A few other students caught on. Wait, does that mean dash? Was he dash? Thought you said dash. Calm down, Karzan said. While I can't be sure, I would say that Green Vigilante was likely your universe's version of one or more of the turtles. Like I said, it's the multiverse. It's not hard to imagine your version of the turtles were heteromorphs with turtle mutations. Anyway, Midoriya, would you mind if I checked out what you have written for the characters? Midoriya, after finishing a note to himself to look up any more stories about Green American vigilantes, passed the notebook to Karzan and he began to read. Splinter. As their MSTR and adoptive father, you can tell Splinter really cares for them and vice versa. Not sure how he learned ninjutsu, but my theory is he was once human but was later mutated by whatever affected the turtles. Despite his age and need for a walking stick, he's shown to be quite fast, agile, and aware of his surroundings when testing the turtles and quite strong when taking on the robots. He's not the most tech-savvy given how much trouble he had answering the phone. Donatello. Weapon, bowstaff. He's the smartest of the group, creating the shell cells and breaking through the lock on the van to free Raphael. His athleticism and skill with his weapon is on par with his brothers and seems to be the most level-headed. Seems to be closest with Mikey. Michelangelo. Weapon, nunchucks. The most immature, he enjoys cracking jokes and taunting Raph. While not the smartest or most focused, he clearly has skill with his weapon. While his jokes can get annoying, he's the heart of the group, bringing levity to tense situations. Raphael. Weapon, twin Sai. The muscle and hot head of the four, Raphael is quick to anger and always ready for a fight, not unlike Kaken. He was shown having the least amount of trouble against the foot. While he showed initiative by being the first to go to the surface, he showed poor decision-making when jumping into the back of a van to hide from the owners. Seems to be in a rivalry with Leonardo. Leonardo. Weapon, twin katana. The leader and most skilled of the four. He shows great dedication to his training as shown when he was the only one to pass Splinter's test. Was the most weary about going topside due to Splinter's warnings. Needs to work on his leadership skills and controlling his brothers. Karzan smiled and handed the notebook back. Thanks. Can't wait to read more. This got a blush from Midoriya. Okay, who's ready to continue? Sounds of excitement filled the room and Karzan pressed play. The episode starts with Michelangelo setting up multiple TVs and upon plugging them in, causing a power failure above and all the TVs are too bright and loud, forcing a disappointed Mikey to turn them off. Ciro gave a whistle. Nice setup. Where I in turn had a similar system for monitoring events but the screens weren't, CRP you'd find at Tacoba Municipal Beach? finished Bakugo. Hey, you make do with what you can, May shouted. I'll have you know most of my baby-making material came from there. Unfortunately, some JRKS decided to take it upon themselves to rob me of that gold mine. Izuku was fidgeting in his seat with a crooked smile while All Might rubbed the back of his neck, both looking a bit guilty. Tarzan couldn't help but giggle. Donnie says, the Turtle Cave is a dumb name for the lair and they go back and forth with different names until Splinter decides to call it home, giving us a shot of the new lair. While the rest of the room debated on the best name for the lair, with the shelter and the Hall of Ninjustice getting the most votes, Izuku couldn't help but wonder about the origins of the place itself. The architecture seemed almost alien and not the sort of thing he'd expect to find in a sewer. However, while he had followed Kaken to many dangerous places when they were kids, the sewers was never one of them, so he could be wrong. He'd have to remember to ask Aizawa or All Might about it later. When Splinter asks where Raph and Leo are, Mikey says they went back to their old lair to get the last of their things and Donnie says they should be back any minute thanks to the sewer slider. The mention of the sewer slider caught May's interest. If that's not a baby name, I don't know what is. Meanwhile, Raph and Leo are gathering the last of their belongings, which include a broken glass jar with TCRI written on it. TCRI? Wonder what that stands for, Izuku wondered out loud. Maybe it's the name of a radio station and that's some promotional lava lamp or something, guessed Present Mike. The rest of the room started making guesses. Totally cool rocket ignition? To Chris Rock's idol? Tenya can be really irritating. Hey, Techno-Cosmic Research Institute? Uraraka guessed, hesitantly. However, this was the only one Izuku wrote down with his own guesses, like Tokyo Cologne Rebranding Incorporated and Tom Clancy Reading Industry. After Raph takes a moment to punch a support column out of frustration over those robots, he hops into the driver's seat of the sewer slider while Leo sits atop the pile of belongings. As Raph starts driving, Leo reminds him the accelerator hasn't been calibrated yet, which Raph ignores, going full throttle with Leo clinging on for dear life until they both let out a "Yeehaaa." They have a flying car? Mina exclaimed. All the more reason Leonardo should be wearing a seat belt. Ida cried out. As if it weren't dangerous enough with Raphael driving. More like a hovercraft but still a cute baby, May said, excitedly. Reminds me of one I've been working on since I saw that American pre-quirk movie about the kid and the scientist going back and forth through time. Young Hatsum, you're developing a flying car? Asked All Might, remembering his All-Mobile. What great inventor isn't? The main problem isn't the flying but the landing. I can get it to fly for 29 seconds before the engine explodes. How is that a landing problem? Momo asked. 'Cause I can never get it to land before it explodes, Hatsum said, as though the answer should have been obvious. Back at the lair, Donatello is examining the remains of one of the robots. When Raph and Leo come back, Leo throws Mikey his DVD collection and when he turns on the TVs to put one on he's stopped by Donnie, who wants to watch the news coverage of a press conference at Stocktronics Inc. Why do I get the feeling this has something to do with the robots? Asked Present Mike. We see Baxter Stockman revealing, rather pompously, his solution to New York City's rat problem, the same robots that attacked and destroyed Turtle's old lair, called Mousers. Present Mike had a big sheet-eating grin on his face. Hey, can one of you little listeners pick up that phone? Wadash. 'Cause I freaking called Thiot. While Donnie couldn't believe Stockman was behind this and Mikey just called his glasses dorky, Raphael was so said he stabbed one of the TVs showing Stockman with one of his sai. Hey, easy, Raph. You only have, 13 more of those, Ciro joked. Honestly, I'm surprised Bakugo's never destroyed our TV, Mina giggled. Wonder how many times his parents had to replace his. Shut up. I have perfect self-control. Bakugo shouted, palms popping. Todoroki and Shinso both gave Izuku a look and Izuku, stealthily, raised 3 fingers. Less than I thought, they both thought. When Raph starts to leave, saying he's going to kick some serious shell, Splinter stops him, hitting him over the head and reminding him and his brothers how badly their last trip went, saying they can ill afford to be seen by more humans. Meanwhile, Stockman is introducing his assistant, April O'Neil, who is pouring rats into a maze. Stockman then demonstrates the sheer genius of his Mauser as it hunts them down and when it cuts back to the turtles' reactions, we hear a crunching sound. A few of the students shudder and cringe at the sounds, especially Koda. Guess now we know why they attacked the turtles, said Mirio. Or, more specifically, Splinter. Izuku was rubbing his chin. I'm not sure if Splinter was the only reason they were there. It would make sense for so many to target such a large rat but that doesn't explain why they attacked the turtles or destroyed so much of the tunnel. Shouldn't they have been focusing solely on Splinter? Good point, problem child, Aizawa said. It's obvious there's something more going on here. Those jaws seem a little too powerful to just be for killing rodents. Besides, Stockman seems a little too pompous for my tastes. Just call it a gut instinct. Either way, Kaminari said with a smile, that redhead assistant is pretty cute OW. Jairu stabbed him with her jacks. I must ask, is it really appropriate for her to be wearing such a revealing shirt in a lab setting? Ida asked. May gave a shrug. Why wouldn't it? You gotta be comfortable while you're working. Back at Stocktronics, when April runs a diagnostic check, she notices half the Mauser prototypes were missing. While Baxter tries to pass it off as a computer glitch, April insists on going over their transmission backups, which causes Baxter to, rather sternly, tell her it won't be necessary and excuses himself to wait for a call from a significant financial backer, though April is still suspicious. Ida looked uneasy. I fear you may be right, Midoriya. This financial backer may be the one behind the true purpose of the Mausers. And I have a good idea who they are. Either way, it looks like April's not involved, said Uraraka. Looks like she's about to be, though, said Aizawa. I've seen that look on her face from the problem child too many times. Back at the lair, Splinter is sparring with the turtles. Raph is distracted and asks why they can't just go attack Stockman. Because the whole point of your training was to keep you hidden from humans and only use violence as a last resort? Asked Jairu, sarcastically. Still, I can understand Raphael's rage, said Tokoyami. He's had a taste of true combat and now hungers for more. They could still fight crime while staying hidden, argued Kirishima. Last time they made sure those purple dragon guys didn't make off with a bunch of cash and that was by accident. Yeah, what's the point in being trained to fight if the rat won't let them do anything? Asked Bakugu. All Might sighed. Because, young Bakugu, Splinter doesn't want his sons to take unnecessary risks. He trained them not to be vigilantes, but to protect themselves if they were ever discovered. TCH, waste of training if you don't plan on using it. Splinter forbids it before heading to his room. While Mikey starts channel surfing and Donnie works on reassembling a Mauser to trace it back to Stockman and find out what he's really up to, Raph decides to head to bed, making Leo suspicious about how early he's going. Hey, hothead's gotta get to bed early. Isn't that right, Mr. 8 p.m.? Kaminari teased Bakugu. Shut up. I got shit to do early in the morning, dunce face. Back at Stocktronics, Stockman is on a video call in his office with the guy at the end of the last episode. While he's angry the first Mauser field test was a failure, Stockman argues it was supposed to show any design flaws and says the next batch was upgraded for greater durability and will be ready for the next phase of the plan. While this is going on, April is listening at the door. Eep! It's the villain, shouted Hagakure. I knew it, proclaimed Ida. Yeah, 9 times out of 10, when someone says, financial backer, they mean, criminal boss, said Mike. Yeah, but why's Stockman working with him, asked Mina. I mean, he's already rich and a genius so why team up with the bad guy? It can be any number of reasons, young Ashido, said All Might. It could be a simple matter of blackmail or the need for additional funding for another project or, more likely, he simply got greedy and wanted even more power and money than he already had. Later, Raphael tries to sneak out, only to be intercepted awaiting Leo. As they fight, a Mauser that Donnie got working runs past them, followed by Donnie and Mike. Reluctantly, Leo joins them with Raph, saying Splinter's gonna kill them. That's bullshit, barked Bakugu. Why follow that stupid robot when they know where it's going? Why not just go with Raph's plan and bust the nerd's head right away? Because, young Bakugu, they know who built them and where the base is but not how the Mausers got in the sewer, said All Might. By following that one they can perhaps find a way into Stocktronics. At least, I'm sure that's what young Donatello would have told Splinter. Surprised they didn't wake Splinter with their little scuffle, said Todoroki. He probably thought Leo would be enough to stop Raph but didn't count on Mike and Don joining him, ribbit, guessed Sue. Or he'd rather sleep than make sure his students don't do anything troublesome. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Aizawa? Asked Nizu, looking at Aizawa with a smile. Aizawa looked away, adjusting his capture scarf. It's not like I ever actually get any sleep in a room full of chatty teenagers, he thought. After Stockman leaves for the night, April decides to check his computer and after the logo for the Foot Clan pops up, a secret room opens up, revealing an elevator that takes her down several floors below the building. Meanwhile, back in the sewers, the turtles are following the Mauser across some pipes when it starts to climb up a wall, forcing the turtles to don Shuko spikes to follow it. So cool, thought Midoriya, adding the spikes to the page that lists the turtles' arsenal. Why is the water brown? Asked Kaminari. Sato looked uncomfortable. Well, it's either the lighting, or what? Well, they are in the sewer, so dash. You. Shutup, cried Mina, flailing her hands in disgust. The turtles climb and follow the Mauser into another pipe, and when Mikey asks what's stopping it from causing more damage, Donnie says he shut down his jaw servos. Only for the thing to prove him wrong and chew its way through more pipes. This leads Don to believe it has some sort of security override routine. Yeah, Sawyer, that's totally a thing, Kaminari joked. Like you would know, Jairu deadpanned. Hey, cut him some slack. May argued. Even if it wasn't an override, there are plenty of other explanations how its jaws turned back on. Oh, defending Donnie, huh? Joked Mina. Could it be you care after all? I just sympathize with a fellow inventor having difficulties with other people's babies, May said with a slight blush. They go to follow it when Donnie stops short, pointing out the Mauser ate through the support of a serious water main above them, and when the pipe bursts, they're washed away back through the pipe they entered. Before the students could say anything, Aizawa said, he clearly said it was a water main, not a sewage main, which put the students at ease. When they're spat out of the tunnel, Donnie quickly grabs a pipe and the rest grab each other's legs, hanging over a whirlpool. When Mike says he has a plan, he starts swinging and uses the momentum to launch themselves to the next wall and climbing back up to continue following the Mauser. While I will admit that was clever of Michelangelo, he really should have stated his plan before acting on it, said Ida. Present Mike shrugged. When time is of the essence, sometimes you just gotta trust your teammates will follow your lead. And when you're dangling over a whirlpool by your brother's legs, time is definitely of the essence. Back with April, she finds an army of Mousers that she believes is overkill for rat extermination. She walks over to the main computer, but on the way she triggers a silent alarm. As she starts typing to find out what his plans are, Stockman appears, and while he doesn't reveal his plan, he tells her his Mauser army will make him a very rich and powerful man, which confuses her since he's already rich and powerful. All Might sighed. There's your answer, young Ashido. A simple case of the powerful never being satisfied. Indeed, Nizu said. Always a shame to see brilliant minds be corrupted by the promise of greater power. A few students couldn't help but give May a nervous look, but Izuku wasn't one of them. He couldn't blame them given her stunt in her fight against Ida in the sports festival, but he'd gotten to know her since then and now understood her eccentricities were born of passion, like how he gets caught in a mumble storm when he's filling out his notebooks. He knew that while her babies would bring her fame and money, those weren't the only reasons why she makes them. She makes them because she enjoys it and no villain, even AFO, could ever tempt her to join them. Besides, she knows she wouldn't be allowed to make babies in prison. While telling her he'll miss working with her, Baxter used a remote behind his back to make a robotic arm grab her and her lab coat rips, dropping her in the middle of a bunch of Mousers which he then activates. She then tries using a fire extinguisher on one, but it doesn't do anything until she crushes it with the extinguisher. Ugh. I'm so sick of that bullshit, growled Bakugu. Oh, what now? Asked an annoyed Jairu. It's the sheet with the foam, weird ears, Bakugu angrily clarified. Extras are always spraying the threat instead of just using the canister itself as a weapon. She helped build the DMN thing, so shouldn't she know spraying them won't do shit? Jairu blinked. Yeah, I guess that is a legit thing to get annoyed by. I always have good reasons for getting said. Sure, Baku bro, Kirishima said, trying to placate his friend. When she tries hitting another one, it bites the canister, causing it to explode and create a smokescreen of sorts. She then runs around a large number of them and opens up a tunnel leading into the sewers where she makes a break for it, with the Mousers not too far behind. So that's how they got into the sewer, said Izuku. Looks like she's on her way to meet the turtles, said Uraraka. Ooh. I can't wait to see her reaction, said a giddy Mina. Well, she already works with a bunch of killer robots, said Zero. How strange can giant, talking turtles be? The turtles have finally caught up with the Mauser they were chasing when they come across another one. Raph throws a shuriken through its head, but it quickly gets back up and the turtles are soon surrounded by the newest batch. Looks like Stockman wasn't lying when he said he made these ones more durable, Kirishima noted. Well, at least they can still be damaged, said Uraraka. They're just gonna have to find their weakness. Maybe they have to completely destroy the head, guessed Kaminari. What, like zombies? Hagakure asked. Maybe, mumbled Izuku. Given his lack of proper data and time for a complete overhaul, Stockman probably only made the bare minimum of upgrades so they'd function while damaged. If he knew the turtles were to blame for their destruction, he probably would have made their bodies stronger and armed them, or maybe repurposed them for DNA procurement. Before he could continue, Uraraka flicked him on the forehead. As Donnie admires the Mousers, the rest are having a tougher time against the new batch until Leo tells them they need to destroy the heads. Mikey says that's good for those with blades, to which Raph responds by telling him and Don to pass them to him and Leo so they can slice and dice them. After all but one is destroyed, Donnie starts to say to leave that one, but Raph quickly stabs it with his sayus and proceeds to stomp it for added measure. "Geez, Raph. I think you got it," joked Ciro. "Guess he forgot the whole reason they were there was to follow one of those things," Todoroki observed. "Just goes to show that while anger can be a useful tool, rage can make you forget the reason you're even fighting," Aizawa said, scanning the room before stopping on Bakugo. "A little longer than the rest. TT. There's probably plenty more they can follow," argued Bakugo. Back with April, she finds herself backed into a dead end by a group of mousers, and as she covers her eyes and screams, the turtles show up and destroy them. She thanks them but faints when she sees Mikey's face. The episode ends with Mikey holding her and asking, "Can I keep her?" "I love you, Mikey, but that line was kinda creepy," said Ashido. Kaminari smirked. "Hey, I wouldn't mind keeping her OWW. He was cut off by Jairu jabbing him with her jacks. Again. "Would you shut up? We finally got rid of that ball-headed BSTRD and you do not need to fill his role." Kaminari pouted. Now that his perverted partner in crime wouldn't be around to take the blunt of the punishments, he'd have to work on his behavior. Still, at least he didn't leave Lake of Drool every time he saw a pretty girl. The next episode starts with April waking up on the turtles' couch. While she at first thinks it was all a dream, she notices the 4 turtles gathered around her and realizes she's not at her place. When Mikey says hi a little too close, she screams, which causes Mikey to scream, and she notices he has 3 fingers and starts repeating to herself that she's asleep. "Hey, why do they have 3 fingers?" asked Mina. "Why do you have horns?" countered Karzan. Never mind. Raph is the next to try talking to her, asking what she knows about the mousers. She starts explaining how she got suspicious last night but then realizes she's talking to a giant, 3-fingered turtle and comes to the conclusion that she's dreaming in an attempt to keep her sanity in check. She then faints after Splinter says he'd like to ask a few questions. While the others consider whether or not to try waking her, Michelangelo puts on some music while he waits. "Why is April so sleepy?" asked Eri. Mirio laughed. "She's not sleepy, Eri. She just keeps getting surprised." Eri still looked confused, so Nijire explained further. "Remember, this is a world without quirks, so what's considered normal for us would be scary or even impossible to someone like her. She's used to things being a certain way, so seeing 4 giant turtles and a rat walking and talking is something so different that her mind couldn't handle it and just turned off. She just needs time to adjust and she'll be fine." The little unicorn nodded in better understanding and hoped April would be okay the next time she woke up. We then cut to a bank where the ground starts shaking. While the customers think it's an earthquake, we see inside the vault that mousers have tunneled through the floor and are biting open safety deposit boxes and scooping up their contents. Meanwhile, Stockman is watching this from his lab, calling the security measures an insult to his consummate genius. "Geez," groaned May. "We get it. You're smart. Shut the hell up, Wile. When did Splatoon get hot?" wondered Bakugo. "I didn't know you liked pre-quirk American cartoons too," May said, an excited Izuku. "Duh. Where you think I get all my best ideas for explosive babies?" Again, Bakugo gave her a curious look. This didn't go unnoticed by Karzan, who pulled out his phone and went to an app called MHA Ship Bingo and tapped the space on his card with BKXHM. "Just need a ATXTF and SRXKE for the win." By the time the police arrive, the mousers have already gone. Back in the lair, Raph lets Mikey know April has woken up and calmed down enough to accept they're real, to which Mikey responds, "Awesomely radical, dude." "Ugh. Did people really used to talk like this in 2003, asked Bakugo. "Yeah, it is kinda cringy," Mina admitted. "It's like when an adult uses words like hip or bossa nova to try to relate to us." "Hey, don't be dissing the little orange listener's lingo." Present Mike defended. "Prime example," Jairu joked, pointing at Mike with one of her jacks, confusing him and making Aizawa silently chuckle into his capture weapon. After Mikey joins them, Splinter explains how the turtles have put them all in danger and how they are at her mercy. April promises not to tell anyone, and Splinter, after getting closer and looking her in the eyes intently, says he believes her. While Leonardo thinks this is a lesson in how to sense the truth, Splinter says it's just trusting his gut. "The real lesson, not everything is a lesson," joked Kaminari. "I wouldn't say that," said All Might. "A hero's gut can sometimes be the only thing they can trust." Aizawa almost made a joke about All Might's lack of a gut, but thought that was too far over the line, even for him. She then asks who/what they are, and Splinter begins to tell their story. Finally, Izuka thought as he flipped to the first page of his notebook which he had saved for their origin. 15 years ago, Splinter was an average rat. One day, he witnessed a blind man nearly get hit by a truck. However, a young man ran to save him, accidentally knocking into another kid, causing him to drop a glass jar containing 4 baby turtles. As the truck swerved, the back opened up and a canister containing a green ooze fell out and down a storm drain along with the turtles. Guess we now know what that broken TCRI canister was, observed Shoji. Uraraka noticed Izuku had stopped writing and was looking deep in thought. Something wrong, Deku? HM? Oh, not wrong exactly, he said, still with a puzzled look about him. It's just something about their origin is familiar, the old blind man specifically. He remembered his dad coming home shortly after being diagnosed as quirkless and showing him his great-grandfather's America pre-quirk comic collection. He explained to Izuku how so many of them were quirkless but still became heroes through training their bodies and minds. He also remembered a character his dad explained was blinded due to an accident but received powers in the form of heightened senses. What was his name? Blind Devil? Demon Man? He then shook his head, realizing he was missing more of the turtles' origin and decided to look it up later. Splinter decided to investigate and found the turtles crawling around in the ooze and decided to gather them up and take them to his burrow, getting ooze on himself in the process. The next day, he awoke to find the turtles had more than doubled in size and that he had grown not only physically but intellectually as well. The turtles followed him and started walking bipedally and speaking. Since he knew they would not be welcome to the outside world, Splinter began teaching them ninjutsu and named them after Renaissance artists in a book he found. "Ah, so cute," squeaked Hagakure at the turtle tots. "Ribbit, you know, for a regular rat, Splinter was already quite smart and kind," said Sue. "I'm sure any other rat would have eaten them rather than gather them in a coffee can and bring them home." "Indeed," commented Nizu. "I have a feeling there is more to Splinter's story than that of a common city rat. For example, when and how did he learn ninjutsu?" "That is odd," noted Izuku, crossing off his theory of Splinter being a human who was mutated. "We know the slime dash." "Ooze," Karzan corrected. "The scientific term is ooze." While some shuddered at the word, Izuku continued. "Ooze made them smarter, but it wouldn't have given him the knowledge of a martial arts MSTR. "Maybe we'll find out if you shut up and let the episode play," growled Bakugu. After Splinter finishes, April asks how they know martial arts and he tells her that's a story for another time. "Damn it," Izuku thought. On TV, the news is reporting on the robbery the Mousers committed and the turtles and April immediately put the pieces together, the Mousers even leaving footprints. "Wait, why haven't the police realized it was the Mousers?" asked Kirishima. "That one guy earlier saw them on the camera before the feed was cut and they left footprints. Why hasn't Stockman been arrested yet?" "Given who Stockman is, I'd say he had the footage erased and his reputation is protecting him," said Aizawa. "Who's going to believe the genius billionaire used rat-killing robots to rob a bank?" "But what about the witness?" asked Momo. "The cops that took his statement might not have taken his account seriously. Like I said, Stockman introduced them as rat catchers so people wouldn't think they'd be capable of robbing banks." After April explains how she knows Stockman and what happened when she met them, they decide to work together to stop him. Back at Stockman's lab, the Mousers are dropping off their ill-gotten gains when Stockman gets another call from his financial backer asking if he's on schedule, much to his annoyance. "Geez, what is with this guy?" asked Zero, bemusedly. "He's acting like a child who's annoyed his parents keep asking if his room's clean yet." "Honestly, he's working for a powerful criminal," said Momo. "What did he expect, for him to simply trust in his genius and not worry about it? Of course he's going to want constant updates on an operation like this. Probably thinks he's irreplaceable so he's not taking his threats seriously," said All Might. "Huh. Well, his big head's about to be popped," grinned Bakugu. Of course Bakugu mentions his head, Karzan thought with a chuckle. In the sewers, April and Dawn diable the alarm in the sewer and she and Raph enter through a vent. They get to a locked door which Raph opens by picking the lock with his sai. "How?" Aizawa asked incredulously. April then accesses a computer terminal to create blank spots in the security system to get the turtles to Stockman's main lab. When they get there, they find it quiet. Suddenly, the lights turn on and Stockman says they won't leave with his secrets or their lives. He then wonders what they are, saying he'll just dissect them when he activates a bunch of lasers. "Well, this shouldn't be too difficult for them," Mike said, without a trace of sarcasm. Why would dodging a bunch of lasers not be difficult?" asked Sato. "Because, unlike my dazzling naval laser, these can be turned against each other," Aoyama explained. "Woo! Look at Mikey's dance moves," Mina said, seeing Mikey dodging. While Leo uses his swords to reflect a laser back on itself, Dawn climbs up one and aims it to take out the other lasers. Once those are taken care of, he disables the one he's on and joins his brothers as they run towards Stockman. Well, if anyone knows a thing or two about lasers, it's Aoyama, said Zero. This is why you need to program your laser turrets to shut down when aimed at each other, said Mei. It's so simple yet so many people forget about that golden rule. They soon make it to Stockman's control booth and with a boost from Raph, Mikey breaks through the glass and Leo soon follows and says, "Your reign of terror is over, Stockman." "Perfectly delivered," said Ida, tears of admiration in his eyes. "So fing corny," grumbles Bakugu. When April arrives and tells him she has enough evidence to put him away for years, he pushes a button and says he recalled all the Mousers and they'll tear them to pieces. This should go without saying, but if you're still in the villain's home base, make sure they can't get to any hidden surprises, said Aizawa. While April and Donnie start trying to shut them down, Stockman escapes in his elevator as the Mousers arrive. They decide to let him go and focus on the army in front of them. As April and Dawn are having trouble shutting them down, Raph says they'll go out fighting and it's been fun, especially with Mikey. And then they suddenly stop. "Ah, see, Bakugu?" Mina teased. "Even Raph loves Mikey." "Meh. Probably just meant it was fun kicking his butt," Bakugu smirked. While they think April was able to shut them down, she clarifies she activated an overload sequence, causing them to begin to smoke. The turtles quickly catch on to what this means and make a break for it just before the Mousers explode. As Stockman runs away, saying he got them all, he runs into a large blonde man with a tattoo of the foot symbol on his right shoulder and a purple dragon wrapping around his left arm. While Stockman says everything is still going according to plan, the big guy, named Hun, decides to take him to the MSTR to explain his plan, carrying Stockman away kicking and screaming. "I take it this the leader of the dragons and the right hand to the MSTR of the foot you mentioned?" Ida asked Karzan. "Yup," Karzan confirmed. "You'll be seeing a lot more of him." As Karzan spoke, Izuku began a new page for Hun. "Either way, I don't think Stockman's doing himself any favors by calling the guy who can pop his skull like a grape up muscle-bound idiot," observed Shoji. While watching a news broadcast about the destruction of Stocktronics and the disappearance of Stockman, April isn't sure what she'll do now. The turtles say they'll help her in any way they can and propose a toast to the new team. To it no longer being a green sausage fest. Mina joked, with Hagakure, Nijire, and even Tsu raising their cups triumphantly and the rest of the girls raising them awkwardly, getting laughs from the rest of the room and a spit take from Ida. Meanwhile, at Foot HQ, Stockman is doing his best to explain his failure as a minor setback, but the MSTR puts on a bladed gauntlet and says he must pay the price for failure. Hun then drags him out of the room and the MSTR is shown the last image the Mousers recorded, heat images of the turtles. He slashes the screen with his gauntlet, now knowing who's to blame. "Welp, if what he did to the blue-haired guy is any indication, I think that's the last we'll see of Stockman," Kaminari thought out loud. "I wouldn't be too sure, young Kaminari," said Nizu. "The difference between Stockman and the thug at the end of the first episode is Stockman still has a brain he can use while thugs are a dime a dozen. No, I believe we'll be seeing a lot more of Dr. Stockman in the future. And a whole lot less with each failure," Karzan muttered, but only Nizu, Jairu, and Shoji heard, the latter two wondering what that meant while the former had a fairly good idea. "Welp, let's move on to the next one," he said excitedly, looking forward to the introduction of his favorite sports equipment-wielding psycho vigilante. The episode starts with Raph being thrown into a pile of boxes by Mikey, the two having a sparring match with Mikey taunting him. Raph gets back up and with every taunt and dodge by Mikey, Raph gets angrier and sloppier until Mikey hits him and calls him slow. "Damn it, Raph, what are you doing?" yelled Bakugu. "You should be able to take this clown down easy." "Probably could," said Shinso. Unfortunately for him, Mikey knows what to say to get under his skin and keep him distracted rather than focused on his next move. Izuku knew Shinso spoke from experience, remembering their match where even though he was warned not to answer him, he still ended up taking Shinso's bait when he insulted Ojiro. While some would call it an underhanded or even villainous strategy, Izuku never took it personally. Shinso was just exploiting a weakness he had like any hero would do to stop a powerful villain. Raph gets in a hit and immediately charges Mikey, accusing him of thinking he's better than him. Mikey gets the upper hand again and says Raph is just too cocky. While Mikey celebrates his victory, Raph, in a blind rage, grabs a pipe and jumps Mikey, ready to beat him with it until Leo grabs him. "Holy sheet," Mina said, surprised Raph nearly bludgeoned his own brother. "Indeed," said Tokoyami. "Raphael is a great warrior but is too easily overcome by the darkness inside of him." "Yeah, I knew Raph had anger problems but that was almost too far," said Kirishima. "It was Orange's fault for pissing him off," Bakugu grumbled. Honestly, what Raph did reminded him of the first battle trials where he fought Deku. Where he'd almost he dodged, so it doesn't matter. As Raph calms down, he's at a loss for words, horrified by what he almost did. Splinter tells him rage is a monster that will destroy him from within and a true warrior finds balance in all things. Raph then runs out, saying he needs some air, and when he gets to the top of a building he shouts, "What is wrong with me?" Even though he hated to admit it, Bakugo understood what the rat meant about finding balance. He still got angry, but he hadn't let himself fly off the handle like he did during the battle trials or sports festival. Aizawa showing him the footage opened his eyes to just how heroic he looked after firing off his gauntlet in his match against Deku or during the award ceremony at the sports festival. Aizawa explained he could still get angry and use that to get stronger, but he couldn't let that rage control him. In a dark apartment, a man with shoulder-length black hair is doing curls while watching a news broadcast about a hockey mask-wearing vigilante attacking the purple dragons. We then see a brief flashback of what looks like a young Hun and his gang walking out of a burning building. Back in the present, he dons a hockey mask and grabs a golf bag full of various sports equipment and says the purple dragons will pay because Casey Jones is on the job. "I already like this guy," Bakugo grinned. "Yeah, Jones seems pretty manly," said Kirishima, wondering about Casey's workout routine. "But he's a vigilante," protested Ida. "So are the turtles," Tsu observed. "They're different," stuttered Ida. "They are not actively seeking out criminals to fight. They were properly trained and told to avoid conflict." Aizawa meanwhile wasn't sure what to make of Jones. He didn't completely approve of vigilantism, but he could tolerate it if it was for a good reason and didn't go over the line. We then see a woman walk down an alley when 3 members of the Purple Dragons attempt to mug her. Raph sees this and is about to intervene, but Casey then gets their attention. They recognize him as the vigilante who's been targeting them, and Raph decides to watch. "Why is he asking them to come out to play when they're already outside?" questioned Todoroki. "I think it's a line from a really old movie," said Jairu. "Yeah, the Warriors," said Kirishima, excitedly. A few students looked at him, surprised. "My dad's a huge cinephile and he especially loves pre-quirk American films. Great flick." Casey takes all 3 down with a hockey stick and a trash can lid, but before he can put them out of business permanently, Raph grabs him before he goes too far. The dragons run while they're distracted and Casey punches Raph and tells him to stay out of his business before running after them. Raph then calmly hands the would-be victim her purse back, but she fearfully tells him to keep away and calls him a lizard thing. Raph just grunts and runs after Jones. "How rude," Ida said, shocked. "I think between the attempted mugging and seeing Jones and Raph, we can forgive her being a bit rude due to her panicked state of mind." Ribbit. "I get being freaked out by Raph, but why would Jones make her scared?" Kirishima asked. "He saved her from those guys." "We know that," started Aizawa, "but from her perspective, a crazy guy in a hockey mask just brutally beat up 3 guys who just happened to be mugging her. How does she know he wouldn't do the same to her after he's done with them? I've had similar experiences, even after showing my license." Raph quickly catches up to him and sees him mercilessly beating the 3 with his hockey stick. Raph quickly kicks him and again tells him to cool it. Jones, angry at being stopped by Raph again, decides he's had enough of him and the 2 get ready to fight while the dragons flee. "This is gonna be good," said Bakugo, grinning wickedly. Back at the lair, Mikey is pestering Don to soup up the armored car and call it the battle shell, showing him a crude drawing. "Damn it!" Bakugo exclaimed. "Get back to the fight. Nobody cares what orange and purple are doing." "Hey, we care," shouted Kaminari and Mina, indignantly. "Nobody who matters cares." "I care," said Nizu, smiling at Bakugo. He quickly shut his mouth and straightened in his seat, refocusing on the TV. Donnie says no because he'll have to do all the work and there's already too much to do, plus, they have nowhere to keep it. Mikey keeps begging him until Splinter tells them both to knock it off since they're breaking Leo's concentration while trying to perfect his split kick. "Okay, Mikey's starting to get on my nerves," Sato admitted. "Yeah, but you gotta admit it's a cool idea and a badass name," said Zero. "What's the point of having a genius brother if you can't bug him to make cool stuff?" "And what does he mean they have nowhere to keep it?" asked May. "Just keep it where they're currently hiding the van." While Leo is still having trouble mastering the move, Donnie gets Mikey off his shell by telling him to hang up a sign that reads, "Sewer Sweet Sewer." "Huh. I gotta get one of those," said Kaminari. "It would definitely fit in your room," jokes Jairu, though Kaminari took it as a compliment. Back to the fight, Raph is still trying to reason with Casey, but he still isn't listening, so Raph disarms him of his hockey stick. Casey pulls out 2 bats and calls Raph a freaking weirdo, and Raph gives up on trying to talk to him and fights back. "Good one, Casey," Shinso deadpanned. Yeah, it's almost on par with some of Bakugu's names, said Kaminari. What's that supposed to mean, Sparky? You see, that's what I'm talking about, explained Kaminari. Can't you come up with something more original? I know I'm not the smartest guy or have the most original or powerful quirk, so I'm used to being teased, but names like Sparky or Pikachu are pretty low-hanging fruit, don't you think? At least Jairu got creative and came up with Jamming Way as both a nod to a famous author and reference to the embarrassing aftermath of going overboard with my quirk. If you're gonna make fun of me, the least you can do is be a little creative. While Bakugu was a stuttering mess over being called uncreative, Jairu blushed a bit at Kaminari, thinking her dumb joke of a hero name for him was creative. Back at the lair, Mikey is having trouble hanging the sign due to the nail not going through the wall and eventually breaking. He then comes back with a spike and sledgehammer. Wow, Orange hanging up a sign, Bakugu said, sarcastically. I'm so glad to be wasting my time on this. Oh, shut up, TMNT, said Hagakure. I'm sure it's leading to something. Yeah, right. What the hell could hanging a stupid sign possibly dash? While Mikey's successful in driving the spike in, the wall soon shakes and breaks apart, revealing a large, blue door with strange markings. When it opens, they see glowing blue patterns lining the walls and a large crystal on the ceiling, which Mikey comments about finding similar broken crystals around the lair. Shut up, said Bakugu. Even though he couldn't see it, he knew the invisible girl was looking at him smugly. Meanwhile, Midoriya was jotting down and crossing out theories. He thought the lair might have been an old bomb shelter or something forgotten by the city, but now he was sure its origins were extraterrestrial. He also made a note about the crystals Mikey found. When all three Turtles and Splinter are inside, the doors suddenly close and they begin moving. Back to the fight, Raph is still trying to get through to Casey, telling him he might go too far and anger the wrong people. Casey just bats him away again and tells him he has his reasons. Damn it, why is Raph still trying to reason with him instead of taking him down, asked Bakugu. Gotta say, I agree, said Mike, surprising a few that he agreed with Bakugu. Some folks just want to fight instead of listen, so you gotta take them out and hope they'll be willing to talk when they wake up. Raph gives into his rage and kicks Casey against a wall. He rips off Casey's mask and sees the anger in his eyes. Raph calms down, and as he's helping him up and telling him they're on the same side and they both need to chill out, Raph doesn't notice Casey grab a golf club. Casey acts like Raph got through to him only to cheap shot him with the golf club, laughing about Raph falling for it. Yeah, Raph really should have seen that coming, admitted Kirishima. TCH. Says the guy who fell for that knife BSTRD's sob story, said Bakugu. Twice. He was a blubbering mess. Hitting someone crying their eyes out didn't feel manly. He could feel Aizawa glaring at him. However, I admit I shouldn't have let my guard down, no matter how pathetic or beaten my opponent may look. Aizawa gave a small nod and turned back to the show. Back with the other Turtles and Splinter, the chamber turns out to be some sort of elevator that brings them up to street level in an abandoned warehouse. Mikey of course takes the chance to point out it would be perfect for storing the battle shell. Well, there goes Donnie's lack of space argument, said Shoji. Hopefully it'll be enough to get Purple to make the DMN battle thing and finally shut Orange up, growled Bakugu. Back to Raph, he's looking for Casey when he comes at him on a motorcycle and trips him with his hockey stick. He then tells Raph if he wants a rematch to meet him at Central Park on Friday night. Raph gives up the chase, and as Casey rides away, we see one of the punks who tried mugging the woman earlier call his boss and tell him he saw the vigilante that's been messing with their operations fighting someone in a bug costume and knows where he'll be on Friday. His boss, Dragon Face, says to spread the word to everyone, planning to ambush Jones. Bug costume, questioned Amajiki. I guess he was too distracted running from the murderous goalie to notice the shell, said Mina. Back at the lair, Raph returns as the rest are discussing added security to the warehouse. They notice he's exhausted, but before explaining, he apologizes to Mikey and the rest for losing his temper. They forgive him and he says he'll explain his sudden revelation over dinner. Nothing manlier than an honest apology, especially from someone as hot-headed as Raph, said Kirishima, not noticing Bakugu wincing. He knew he had plenty to apologize to Deku for, but he just wasn't ready, damn it. Later, the Turtles are attempting to sneak out and find Casey, but Splinter is waiting for them. He again explains they can't simply walk amongst the humans and then, quotes, the great sage and warrior Kenji Hashimura, why walk when you can ride? He then smiles and tells them to take the truck, and by Friday, they've customized it into the battle shell and they set off to find Jones. Can we all agree Splinter's the best? Asked Hagakure. Indeed. He may worry for his sons, but knows helping Jones is important enough to them to allow them to save him, said Ida. Though, I doubt the source of that quote. May gave a whistle at the battle shell. Not bad. Can't wait to see what surprises that baby has in store. Yeah, nothing says ninja like a giant, armored van that shoots flames out the back, jokes Jairu. Casey is spotted entering the park on his bike by a purple dragon and he phones Dragon Face. Soon, the turtles spot him too and Donnie tells Raph to follow him on the Shell CYCL, a custom red motorbike with matching helmet. That is so cool, exclaimed Kaminari. I gotta get me one of those, Kirishima thought with a pointy grin. Wait, did Raphael not notice the motorcycle in the back until now? Asked Momo. Let's just say he was focused on finding Jones and leave it at that, said All Might. Raph bursts out the back of the van on the Shell CYCL and soon catches up to Jones. He asks Jones to pull over and when he doesn't, Raph forcefully applies the brakes on Jones' bike and sends him flying. As he's getting up, Raph speeds towards him and jumps off his bike, tackling Casey. The whole room cringed at seeing Jones taken down. And that's why you should always wear a helmet, said Ojiro. Yeah, you never know when a giant, mutant turtle cause you to crash and then body slam you to the pavement, joked Mina. Slapshot should have pulled over, Bakugo said with a shrug. Surprised he didn't call him goalie face, mumbled Kaminari and Jairu had to suppress a laugh. Raph helps him up and offers to help take down the purple dragons but wants Casey to show a bit more restraint. Casey then tells Raph about when he was a kid and when his father wouldn't pay for protection, Hun and the purple dragons burned their store down. Hun also told Jones to tell his dad to pay next time or else. So that's it, mumbled Aizawa, glaring at Hun. Poor kid, said All Might. Still, it was pretty manly of his dad to stand his ground, said Kirishima. Yes, but I am worried about Mr. Jones' fate, said Yamamo. I always hated how they called it protection, said Uraraka with a scowl. She remembered a few years ago seeing a cat mutant named Hob trying to shake down her dad at their construction company. Thankfully, he and his gang were taken down by the local hero team of Wingnut and Screwloose before they could follow through on their threats. Back in the present, Jones tells Raph again not to tell him how to take down the dragons and Raph just tells him his anger can take him down to their level and explains Splinter's lesson about balance. This seems to get through to Jones and he and Raph start ribbing on each other until they find themselves surrounded by purple dragons, including Dragon Face. Damn it. They were this close to kissing. Mina exclaimed. The room slowly turned their heads towards her and she blushed. What? Am I the only one feeling the SXL tension between those two? While most just blinked and turned back to the screen, others like Bakugo were gagging at the mental image of Raph and Slapshot making out. The other turtles then arrive and they start fighting, Leo even finally string his split kick and getting a 10 from Casey and a 6 from Raph, much to his dismay but as Raph pointed out, that's all he's got. Finally, back to the action, Bakugo grinned. Mina, however, had other things on her mind. Seriously, why do they only have 3 fingers? Seriously, why do you have horns? Karzan countered. Ojiro cleared his throat. I gotta admit, that split kick was impressive. Took me a few years to MSTR mine and that's with my tail to help prop me up. I'm still amazed how agile they are, Ribbit, said Sue. Can't really blame Casey for mistaking him for a frog. Dragon Face is the last to go down and Casey says he finally gets what Raph is about. While Raph thinks he's talking about balance and self-control, Casey jokes that he's a green mutant freak but he likes him. He gives Raph a playful shove which Raph returns and they soon start wrestling, much to the embarrassment of the others. Ha! Idiots, Bakugo said with a smirk. I'm looking forward to more of Jones, said Ojiro. Yeah, anyone able to take on a mutant turtle trained in ninjutsu with nothing but sports equipment is manly in my book, said Kirishima. While I'm still unsure if I approve of his methods, I am glad the turtles are gaining allies, said Ida. I wonder what April will think about the beefy, bad boy vigilante, Mina teased, already shipping them. Glad you guys like him, said Karzan. Next up, the episode one think will break May's heart. While May tilted her head at that, the next episode started. The episode starts in a laboratory with a female scientist running tests on a cloud of nanobots. She says they work together as a colony via a hive mind and they cannot disassemble molecules or organic cells. Nanobabies. May squealed. Finally back to the good stuff. Nanotechnology is a fascinating subject, said Yayorozu. I've often wondered how my quirk would interact with something so small yet so complex. I don't suppose you'd have any similar technology you'd allow me to conduct some tests with, Yayorozu asked Karzan. I do, but I'll have to discuss it with Nizu. How do you think I fixed the couch? May quickly jumped at Karzan while shouting Gimma Gimma Jimma Jim only to be caught by Aizawa's scarf until she calmed down. After a few minutes of struggling, she resigned herself to watching the show, but sent a quick challenging glare towards Karzan, who returned it with one of his own. The scientist then puts an alarm clock and a toaster in the test chamber to test the nanobot's ability to take apart and resemble them. Much to her annoyance, the parts are reassembled into a rudimentary, childlike body, and she explains the hive mind is like a 3-year-old. AWWW, Kud Mina, Hagakure, May, and Nijire. Eri also smiled but then frowned when she noticed the scientist's tone. The scientist uses a remote to shock it and it screams in pain as the nanobots are forced to abandon the body. She says the glitch will need to be fixed and leaves to get a cup of coffee. Hey dash. Whoa dash. The foo dash. What the hell, May exclaimed the loudest. It's not the result she wanted, said Todoroki, with a slight glare. She wants an emotionless creation to do her bidding, not a child. Mirio looked down by his legs and saw Eri frowning and shaking. He picked her up and put her on his lap with a smile. She gave a small one back and looked back at the screen with furrowed brows. I hope he escapes, she thought. As soon as the scientist was gone, the nanobots reconstructed the body but this time with a drill for a hand. It drilled a hole into the wall of its prison and the cloud escaped through it and into an air vent leading to an alley. Interesting, mumbled Midoriya. They may have the mind of a toddler but they're clever enough to formulate an escape plan. Way to go, nano babies. May cheered. Eri gave a small nod and smile, glad to see them escape from the mean lady. The nanobots soon come across Harry, the pickpocket, Parker, a conman trying to sell some toy robots and getting angry when no one wants them, calling everybody ingrates, accusing them of thinking they're better than him, and even throwing in a "why I oughta." Most of the room burst into laughter at the stereotypical New York vendor. Oh my god, this guy is too much. Ha ha ha. The accent, the attitude dash. Right? I can't believe he said, "why I oughta." It's worse than Snipe Sensei's hickish. Achoo. Ah, dagummit, Snipe said, frustratedly wiping the residue from the pages of the romance novel he was reading for Hound Dog's book club. The one time I take off mask today, some varmints gotta go flappin' their gums, 'bout me. The nanobots continue observing a father buying his kid one and talking Harry down from $5 to $3, though Harry steals his wallet. As the two walk away, the toy completely falls apart but Harry's already gone, angry that the father only had $13 on him and complaining about never getting a break. Ugh. I hate these kinds of criminals, groaned Present Mike. It's always about them and how hard they have it despite the fact they never tried to better themselves. All Might agreed. It's one thing to be forced into crime due to some unfortunate circumstances but it's another to just be too lazy to get a real job. As Harry walks away, he trips on the nanobots and drops his briefcase and boombox. The nanobots form a new body out of the boombox and parts of the robot toys and says, "Daddy," while walking towards a horrified Harry. "No. He's not your daddy," May shouted. "You've got a willing and loving mama right here." Meanwhile, at the second time around antique shop, the Turtles and Casey have come to help April clean up and move in. When she and Casey meet, taken aback by the other, April says the shop was her dad's and she was reopening it until she figured out what she wanted to do next since her last job ended weirdly. While the rest of the room was chuckling at the understatement that her job ended weirdly, Mina was vibrating in her seat and squeeing internally as the Capril ship set sail. Unfortunately, Jones misunderstands her and thinks she's hiding out until she gets a real job and unknowingly insults her by calling it a junk shop and calling her babe. He and Raph then try to move a cabinet full of rare antique china, causing it to spill out and shatter. He simply says they'll clean it up, but April angrily stomps out and Jones wonders if she's always so sensitive. Heh. Real smooth, slapshot, smirked Bakugu. Why do the beefy ones have to be the biggest idiots, thought Mina, face-palming over how long she knows it'll take for the two to get together. Subconsciously, she was also thinking about how long it'll take for Kiri to make a move on either her or Bakugu. Back with Harry, he at first wants his stuff back but then gets the idea to use the nanobots to take apart alarms. When the bot repeats the word daddy, he says he'll be his daddy so long as he does what he tells him. They shake hands and later that night, Harry has the bots help him break into a jewelry store. The next day, he's in a new suit and whistling while saying the kid's his lucky break. The degenerate's using a child's naivete for his own ends, Ida grumbled, glaring at the screen. This guy just gets more unmanly by the second, Kirishima scowled. Unfortunately, incidents like this happen quite often in our society, said Nizu, sadly. A parent will use their child's strong or useful quirk to aid them in their criminal endeavors and the child will be none the wiser or even be convinced by their parent they are doing the right thing. Remember, students, when dealing with cases like these it's very important the child understands what they were doing was wrong but not necessarily their fault. Midoriya's mind instantly went to Eri and how Overhaul had her. Convinced she deserved all the sick experiments he put her through and that her quirk, her powerful, wonderful quirk was a curse. It filled him with disgust, and his anger must have shown because he felt a hand on his shoulder, and it was Uraraka, smiling nervously. He looked over where Eri was sitting on Mirio's lap with a juice box in one hand and a half-eaten slice of pizza in the other, and her big red eyes glued to the TV. Like a child should be. She looked away from the TV and gave him a smile and wave with the juice box that he returned, and then gave a smile and nod to Uraraka before turning back to the show. As it turns out, the jewelry store Harry robbed was near April's shop, so she asked the turtles to sleep over in case anything happened. Also, Jones was watching over them from a rooftop across the street. "Can we all agree Jones looks totally badass right now?" asked Kaminari. "Surprised there isn't lightning behind him," joked Zero. Harry walks by second time around and tells Nano to fetch a pinky ring he sees in the window. Meanwhile, the turtles have fallen asleep in front of the TV. Inside the shop, Nano comes across some masks and remembers Harry saying he can't tell if he's smiling or not. When Harry gets anxious, he sees Nano playing with the masks and they make a run for it, with Nano taking the masks so he can show emotions. "That's both cute and kinda creepy," said Hagakure. "At least they're not clown faces," said Sato with a shudder. Izuku meanwhile added to Nano's page how it seemed to be becoming more human, showing a longing to be able to express itself through the masks. As they attempt to leave, Casey catches them. As he's interrogating Harry, Nano creates a new, larger body using a car and sends Casey into a wall, waking up the turtles. "Oof. I think you're gonna need something bigger than a bat, Jones," said Kaminari. They've gotten so big," squealed May, much to Jairu's dismay. "They must be self-replicating to have enough bots to create something so large." Harry hides behind Nano, thinking the turtles are aliens. They try attacking, but their weapons have no effect. Eventually, Donnie uses a blowtorch, which causes him to cry in pain and knock Donnie away. The room couldn't help but wince at what sounded like a child in pain. May, Eri, and even Todoroki looked especially unsettled. Izuku, however, was quick to note Nano's apparent weakness to extreme heat. When the turtles turn their attention towards Harry, Nano quickly scoops him up and runs for it. April soon comes out to help Jones, and Donnie notices a piece of metal that came off Nano still moving. When Donnie examined it under a microscope, he found the nanobots. When asked if they were dangerous, he said they were moving randomly and mindless since they were cut off from the main group. "So they're like Kaminari after he overuses his quirk?" Jairu asked. Kaminari gave Jairu a deadpan look. "Do you not want me to have children? 'Cause at the rate you keep busting my ball, I'm gonna be totally sterile before the end of the semester." While Raph and Mikey point out how childlike the robot was, Donnie lets them know the nanobots are self-replicating and how dangerous they can be if allowed to keep multiplying. He says the bots have a unique power signature they can track and points out their weakness to extreme heat. "Gah! Will they stop doing that?" May cried out, seeing Don destroy the nanobots under the microscope. "Oh, shut up, Splatoon," Bakugu barked out. "They're just stupid robagh." Bakugu was cut off by a grapple gun cord wrapping around his wrists and pulling him toward May, who was aiming a rather large sci-fi pistol at him and had positioned his tied wrists under his face so he couldn't use his quirk. "Finish that sentence," she whispered with a dangerous smile. "Please." After a moment of stunned silence, Nizu cleared his throat. "Miss Hatsum, please release young Bakugu. Remember, you can't make your marvelous babies if you're in Tartarus for murder." After another few seconds, May released the boy, who was gasping for breath while looking at her in stunned awe at her ferocity. With a flurry, she attempted to holster her gun, but after another cough from Nizu, she sadly handed it to the small principal, who needed both paws to hold it before laying it down next to his cup of ginseng tea. Casey, who was laying on the couch in bandages, made to get up and join them but grunted in pain. April said he wasn't going anywhere and she went to get more bandages. While Raph knew Casey was overacting, he let it go. "At least young Jones wasn't hit with a cane for trying to stand," said All Might, wincing at the many memories of Recovery Girl scolding him as a reckless student and reckless adult. Unbeknownst to him, Recovery Girl was apologizing to a third year for sneezing as she was mid-healing kiss. At a junkyard, Harry is thanking Nano and saying how proud he is for saving him, much to Nano's joy. He's wondering if the turtles are from where Nano came from and want to take him back with them, and says they should skip town. "You know, I'm not sure I want the turtles to find them," said Yaoyorozu. "What do you mean? He's a criminal." "Yes, Ida, but Nano isn't and the turtles plan to destroy him." "Yamamo does have a point," said Uraraka. "I mean, Harry could be using Nano for worse things than burglary." Nizu nodded. "While I understand your feelings, you must see the harm in allowing Harry to command such powerful technology should he grow tired of being a simple hood." Yaoyorozu nodded but was still conflicted. Artificial or not, it still had the innocence of a child. When the turtles arrive, Nano lets out a roar and uses various junk around him to make himself even bigger, replacing his head which had his masks on a tire with a TV. Great! Now his tantrums can be in UHD, joked Zero. The turtles then decide to attack him so fast he can't have a chance to repair himself. Leo succeeds in cutting off his arm, only for Nano to make a new one and grab Mikey, spinning him before throwing him. Damn it, I hate that sound, said Bakugu, referring to when Leo cut off the arm and Nano screamed in pain and anger. Same, said Jairu, wincing along with the rest of the room. Bet Bakugu made similar noises when he didn't want to take a nap in preschool, said Kaminari, lightening the mood a bit. They then get in the battle shell for Plan B, but Nano grabs it and the nanobots start taking it apart. Raph then bursts out the back on his shell CYCL and Nano lets go as Raph distracts him. He leads him to a trash compactor and when in position, Mikey rams him with the van, knocking him in and activating the compactor. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. Why would they think that would work? Were they not listening when Donatello told them only extreme heat could stop them? Present Mike shrugged. Well, maybe they're trying to weaken it? They don't exactly have a pool of molten metal they can dump him in. Nano quickly rebuilds itself and chases after them again. Donnie quickly jumps out of the van and mans a giant magnet which soon picks up Nano and brings him over a pit of molten metal. Present Mike gaped. Why didn't they use that from the beginning? While Aizawa shook his head, a few students were feeling uncomfortable about Nano's predicament. Eri in particular was hoping he'd get away somehow. While Nano struggles to get off the magnet, Harry rushes to free him by turning off the power, unfortunately dropping Nano into the molten liquid screaming. Harry runs to see its arms sink while it says a final, "Daddy." Harry then collapses to his knees holding one of Nano's masks, crying about breaking his lucky break and saying he's sorry as police cars surround him. The room was a mix of emotions. Some like Eri and Mei were openly weeping while others like Tsu and Kirishima were a bit more subdued but still had tears in their eyes. Bakugu, however, was disgusted. He knew Harry wasn't crying because he lost something he loved or cared for but because he lost the thing that was making his sleazy life easier. BSTRD should have been the one taking a lava bath. On the ride back to April's, Mikey mentions feeling bad for Nano and Donnie comments it was a shame his parent was so terrible. As they pull in, Leo mentions he's glad the fighting's over, only for them to walk in on April and Casey arguing. They then leave to let them continue arguing. As the episode ended, April and Casey's arguing got a few laughs from the audience, but Eri still looked sad. She was really hoping someone would save Nano. Karzan noticed her frown and decided to give everyone a break before continuing and went over to where Mirio was talking with Nijire and Amajiki. Hey, guys. Enjoying the show? As Mirio started to reply, Nijire started going on and on about how cool and funny all the turtles were and how she was shipping Casey and April. After letting her ramble for a bit, Karzan bent down to ruffle Eri's hair. How about you, little unicorn? Having fun? He asked softly with friendly smile. She nodded but didn't look him in the eye and still had a frown. Maybe you'd like a couple new friends to watch with you. Eri looked up as Karzan reached into his coat and brought out two plushies. One looked like Splinter while the other was almost a life-sized Nizu. Eri's eyes widened and with a big smile she hugged them both close to her, whispering a thank you. With that, Karzan and the big three, even Amajiki, shared a smile and he left to grab a birch beer. Unfortunately, on his way he was assaulted by a teary-eyed Mei and spilled the drink on himself. "Whyy," she shouted as she shook him by the shoulders. As he was being jostled he could see Eri among the students laughing at his pain and couldn't help smiling himself. After calming her down and changing his shirt for a black one with the word Viridian written in bright green above a picture of a ninja with green eyes, he got everyone together again to start the next episode. The episode starts with the turtles enjoying some extreme sports with Mikey on his skateboard, Raph rollerblading, Leo on a scooter, and Donnie on a bike. "Man, it feels like forever since I broke out my skateboard," said Ojiro. "Yeah, same. Didn't peg you for a skater," said Shinso. "You any good?" Ojiro shrugged. "I'm alright. I got pretty far in a couple competitions as a kid where we were allowed to use our quirks to do tricks. I tried one of those," said Mina, rubbing the back of her head. "Unfortunately, I didn't quite have control of the strength of my acid yet and ended up turning the half pipe into 2/4 pipes. Yeah, it's too bad there's not a skatepark near us," said Kaminari. He then brightened up. "Hey, do you think Cementos dash?" "No," deadpanned Aizawa. "Biba Jim Gamma would be per dash." "No. I'll consider it," chirped Nizu, making Aizawa's eye twitch. As the turtles continue to ride in their lair, Splinter makes his way to the TVs while carrying a tray of tea and muffins. On the way, he sidesteps Leo, has to duck as Donnie jumps over him, and jump up so Raph doesn't plow into him. And, when he's finally settled, Mikey steals the muffin he was going for. Aizawa shook his head while muttering, "Teenagers," and couldn't help sympathize with Splinter. "What are they doing?" exclaimed Ida, tugging his hair. "Have they no respect for their sensei and father?" Raphael nearly ran Splinter over. "So what?" The rat jumped. "That's not the point." As soon as Splinter sat down, there was a power failure and the turtles crashed into each other in the dark. "Huh. Perhaps that will teach them not to be extreme green in the living room," Ida said smugly. "Hey, if Splinter didn't want them skating in the lair, he shouldn't have let them install ramps," shrugged Kaminari. After Splinter lights a candle, he suggests they investigate the blackout and see if they can fix it before he misses his favorite show. Mikey grabs his skateboard, Raph sheaths his blades, and Leo and Donnie fold their scooter and bike. "Hey, Ida, why don't you have retractable blades like Raph?" asked Kirishima. "Yeah, if you had wheels, I bet you could have gotten back to the main campus from the USJ in half the time," said Hagakure, excitedly. "I admit, I did fiddle with the concept, but then there was the matter of, stopping," Ida said, scratching the back of his head. At that, Mina winced remembering when she's wiped out when learning to slide on her acid, but she then perked up. "Hey, I bet I can teach you some tricks. Plus, Hatsum could probably come up with some way of slowing you down enough to not wipe out. That way you can use them for emergencies when you really need to huff it." "I will consider it. Thank you, Mina," he said with a bow. When they notice the whole side of town is dark and there aren't even any emergency lights on, they decide to have some fun while nobody can see them. Donnie then points them in the direction of 2-foot ninja sneaking into a museum and they decide to investigate. Finally, more action. "For once, I agree with Bakugu," said Uraraka, still getting over the ending of the last episode. Inside the museum, the Foot are retrieving a strange sword and apparently need a special glove to handle it. Before they can get it, Leo throws a shuriken and says the gift shop's on the first floor, but they don't take kindly to shoplifters. "Huh. I love quips," laughed Mike, with All Might nodding with a fond smile. "So cool," thought both Izuku and Tokoyami upon seeing the sword. When Raph points out they're outnumbered, more ninja drop down and surround them. One with a staff comes at Leo, but when he slices it in half, 2 blades pop out of the wood. Leo's almost taken off guard, but he quickly turns and the blades break on his shell and he kicks the Foot into another. "Wait, how'd he dash?" "Don't ask," said Karzan. But one blade came out the side that was cut and the off dash. "Look, just accept he was ready for anything and move on." Believe me, it's not the most frustrating thing to happen this episode. Raph dodges a sword on his rollerblades that slices through a vase and throws the ninja into a gong. Donatello does a wheelie into another that sends him into a suit of samurai armor and justs another into a vase. While most students could just enjoy the action, the class rep and vice rep couldn't help cringe at the damage to such priceless artifacts from their country. Mikey then takes down 3 and then another that he rips the symbol from the front of his shirt. Leo is soon having trouble, and when the other 3 come to help, the Foot jump out of the way and the turtles run into each other. While they're recovering, the Foot make a run for it and another grabs the sword. When he's cornered by the turtles, to his surprise, the sword starts glowing and shoots out waves of energy that knock the turtles back and he quickly gets away with the rest. While the turtles want to follow, they hear police sirens and book it home. "Dude, the bad guys have a magic sword now?" exclaimed Kaminari. "I dunno about magic," said May. "Might be a self-perpetuating oscillation frequency generator." When Kaminari just stared, she was going to try dumbing it down only for Karzan to place a hand on her shoulder and shake his head. When they get back to the lair, they present the symbol to Splinter. They ask him what it means and he cryptically says, "Trouble." While Raph asks who they are and work for, Mikey asks what they want with a magic sword, which Donnie corrects by confirming May's theory. When asked to explain it in English, Donnie says it produces a shockwave that'll knock you flat on your shell. While May was looking smug, Izuku was, of course, making note that a supposedly ancient sword was powered by strange technology. Maybe alien involvement isn't looking so far-fetched after all. When Raph wants to go after them, Splinter rebuffs him, saying a wise ninja doesn't seek out an enemy he doesn't understand. When Leo starts pointing out Bushido demands they fight for honor and justice, Splinter cuts in and says Bushido also demands they honor their MSTR's wishes and goes to his room to meditate. "Looks like Splinter has history with the Foot," Ojiro thought out loud. "Yeah, and I'm guessing none of it good," said Uraraka. "Probably somehow responsible for how he knows ninjutsu," Todoroki said, writing something in a flip notebook. When Uraraka glanced over, she saw a jumbled mess of words and lines connecting them. Before looking away, she noticed a particularly odd theory. Splinter plus Turtles reincarnated Foot Ninja? While Mikey was disappointed, Donnie seemed to get an idea and went to his computer, saying there was more than one way to seek out your enemy. Back at Foot headquarters, the leader is sparring with 4 of his underlings and easily dispatching of them when Hun arrives, presenting the sword of Tengu. DMN, said a wide-eyed Uraraka, in awe at the skill displayed. She wasn't alone in this opinion, even Aizawa doubting he'd be able to take him in a fight. It even has a cool name, thought Izuku and Tokoyami. Meanwhile, inside Tokoyami, Dark Shadow was shaking his head at what a sword nerd his host could be. He then picked up the sword, saying it was still potent and could still find artifacts that share its unique origin when he holds it in front of a case containing armor and it glows. He says it'll help find his enemies and tells Hun to bring it to Tech Division and tell them to proceed with phase. Interesting, said Nizu. What is, sir? Asked Yaoyorozu. Well, I noticed while it seemed the Foot ninja needed a special glove to hold the sword, the leader was able to touch it with no side effects. He also seems to be quite familiar with it, saying it was still potent after all these years, like he had used it before. Also, that armor is most interesting, considering it is somehow connected to the sword. While Izuku had already made a rough sketch of the armor and noted its connection to the sword, what Nizu said about the leader got him thinking. Could he be older than he looked? Did he perhaps have some kind of quirk, or that universe's equivalent of a quirk? Could he -no, he couldn't be, even if aliens are somehow involved. Back in the lair, Mikey and Leo were talking about how the foot symbol was bothering Splinter and Raph wanted to get answers himself by finding them. When Leo stops him, Donnie calls out that he hacked into the power company and found another blackout by the South Street seaport. When Leo tries to stop them, Raph points out Splinter said not to go after the foot but didn't say anything about investigating power failures. With Mikey and Donnie joining him, Leo reluctantly follows, commenting how tough it is being the leader. I understand all too well, Leonardo, Ida thought, shaking his head. Loopholes, a parent's worst enemy, Mike said, Aizawa and All Might nodding in agreement. On the Brooklyn Bridge, the turtles confirm another part of the city is blacked out like the night before. Donnie, however, came prepared with night vision goggles and an untested hang glider. When Leo is surprised Donnie hadn't tested it, Mikey points out how he couldn't test a flying machine in the sewers. I mean, that really is just common sense, said Mina. What about these 4 is ever common, Ribbit, joked Sue. A hang glider? May angrily questioned. That's so lame. It doesn't even have any rockets or jet turbines. Plus, I bet he didn't even account for the wind drag for his staff. Don then jumps and starts gliding, getting the hang of it and letting the others know via communicator he's okay. He almost hits one of the bridge supports but quickly corrects his course and notes his failure to account for the wind drag on his bowstaff. May just shook her head. You're letting me down, Purple. He soon notices a beam of shockwaves like they saw the sword produce being fired into the water and reports it seems like they're looking for something. When Donnie zooms in, he sees 2 foot technicians manning a vibrational cannon which uses the sword to power it. He reports he's at Pier 16 and when he goes in for a closer look, he gets caught in the beam and goes spinning out of control into the water. And that's why it's a stupid idea to use a hang glider for surveillance, said May. Aizawa wouldn't say it out loud, but he did agree with the pink-headed gremlin. He expected better from the smartest of the problem reptiles. After confirming he's okay, the other 3 get closer to the cannon. Leo reports he can only see 2 guys but that just means the rest are hiding. On cue, several foot ninja surround them. They then call out, let's turtle IZEEM before attacking. What the F, does that even mean? Their fight brings them onto a ship and soon Donnie joins them. While they're fighting, we see the beam has unearthed something and a helicopter use a crane to pick it up. Is that AAB body? Hagakure questioned, nervously. I don't think so, said Shinso. Looked like some rusted armor to me. Well, that villain did say the sword could find artifacts related to it, said Yaoyorozu. Meanwhile, we see the turtles working together more efficiently, with Leo helping both Mikey and Raph. They then notice the chopper lifting whatever it was they found. They decide to worry about that later and head towards the cannon. As the technicians turned it off and was about to retrieve the sword, the turtles surround them. When one tried using a laser, Leo kicked him and it fired into the control panel for the cannon, causing it to overload and start firing and the technicians quickly make their escape in the chopper. Cowards! May cried. At least go down with your baby. Well, not everyone deserves to be a parent, young Hatsum, joked All Might. The cannon then starts moving on its own and destroying the dock. Mikey makes a bad vibes joke, much to Bakugo's annoyance, and Donnie says he can disconnect the sword while the other 3 try pushing the cannon away from the city. As they're struggling, a police copter soon calls out to them. Damn it, where the hell were they 5 minutes ago? Bakugo asked, angrily. Don't forget, this part of the city was blacked out, explained Nizu. I assume after retrieving what they were after, power was restored and they planned on moving the cannon before the police arrived. Unfortunately, when the cannon overloaded it gained the attention of local law enforcement and they left the turtles with the blame. As the copter was getting closer, Don crossed a wrong wire, causing the cannon to spin out of control until Leo stopped it with a crowbar. Once it stopped, Don tries grabbing the sword but is shocked. Well, that was dumb, Tsu deadpanned. Yeah, but how is he gonna grab it, asked Izuku. I'd say they can use the glove, but they only have THRE-. Leo then throws Don the metal glove, which he uses to grab the sword, causing the cannon to become unstable and they run before it collapses into the water and explodes. Tarzan quickly spoke up. Before anyone asks, yes, he put a 5-fingered metal glove over his giant 3-fingered hand. No, I don't know how he did it or how he controlled all 5 fingers. It's just one of the great mysteries of the multiverse. Drop it and move on. Back home, they present the sword to Splinter, who says it's 11th century Japanese but made from a metal he's never seen. He says there's more to it than meets the eye and places it on a stand. At Foot HQ, the MSTR says while he has proof of his enemy's presence in the city, he's angry it cost him the sword of Tengu. The technicians explain 4 creatures attacked them and when the MSTR shows them the thermal image from the Mousers, they confirm it was them. When they're dismissed, Hun is waiting on the other side of the door and grabs them, presumably for punishment, and the MSTR says the turtles must be eliminated, stabbing the image with his bladed gauntlet. Looks like the villain's about to get serious about hunting the turtles, observed Mina. You got that right, Bubblegum, said Tarzan. So, unless anyone has any questions a few hands raised at this, not related to how Donnie put on the glove every hand went down, let's keep going. At Foot HQ, Hun is in front of their leader, looking at the thermal image of the turtles and calling them turtle costume freaks, when Baxter Stockman, now missing an eye, comes in, mocking the report as fantasy. However, the leader angrily reminds them both they were the ones who destroyed the Mousers and took back the sword of Tengu. Tsu tilted her head. Ribbit, I get Hun being skeptical since he's never actually encountered them yet, but did Stockman really forget that 4 turtles destroyed his lab? Pretty sure he just wanted to hear his own voice and said whatever condescending CRP came to mind, said Jairu. Either way, looks like we now know what his punishment was for failing, said Todoroki. Jairu's and Shoji's eyes widened in understanding. This is what Tarzan meant when he mumbled they'd see a lot less of him with each failure. While Hun suggests they're working for his enemies, their MSTR commands them to work together to get answers and, if necessary, destroy them. Yeah, I'm sure those two will work about as well together as Bakugo and Midoriya did during their final exam, said Mike. While Bakugo grumbled at the remark, Midoriya was focused on Hun mentioning the MSTR's old enemies. This was the second time they were brought up and apparently whatever was found in the water last episode is proof they're in the city. Whoever they were, any enemy of the Foot is a potential ally for the turtles. In the turtles' lair, they are shown balancing on bamboo sticks as Splinter explains their lesson will be about balance and, after turning off the lights with a clap, invisibility. Mikey, however, is distracted by the fact Donnie installed the clapper. Idiot, grumbled Bakugo. So, I'm guessing this is basically gonna be night tag mixed with the floor is lava, joked Mina. After being reprimanded by Splinter, the training begins. The turtles are shown having to dodge and attack Splinter all while balancing on the poles. Mikey attempts to cheat by clapping the lights on but still fails and is knocked off balance. Gotta admit, while Mikey's strategy went against the point of the exercise, it was clever, said Mirio. Aizawa grunted. I'd be tempted to agree had he not wasted his advantage by gloating. He then made a note to remember this exercise for stealth training. Splinter claps the lights off again and explains they must learn stillness and alertness to defend against the unexpected. As he says this, Casey steps out of the elevator and bumps into the poles, knocking the turtles and Splinter over. Guess Splinter should have heeded his own teachings, said Shoji. Tokoyami shrugged. I suppose even the eyes of a MSTR of darkness can fail from time to time. Splinter quickly attacks and pins him before the turtles explain who he is and how they gave him access to the lair for emergencies. While Splinter asks Casey for forgiveness, he also asks him to heed the ancient Japanese proverb, phone first. I doubt that proverb originated in Japan, deadpan Todoroki. While Ida agreed, several others just shook their heads at their classmates' lack of a sense of humor. Casey then explains he's there because of graffiti. While confused at first, the turtles understand when Jones shows them a photo of a tag of a sword skewering 4 turtles, guessing someone's sending them a message. Yikes, Jairu said, eyes wide like a few others. Wonder whose job it was to come up with the design. Honestly, with what we've seen of the organization, I wouldn't be surprised if they had someone in their marketing department for such tasks, said Yaoyorozu. Hey, we don't know for certain it was the foot, Hagakure joked. Maybe it's the tag of a new gang. Shiro laughed. Yeah, you don't want to wander into samurai tortoise territory. While Jones says some of the graffiti is more graphic, he gets distracted by the sword of Tengu and how it resembles the one in the tag. He goes to pick it up and before the turtles can warn him, the sword electrocutes him and sends him flying back into a bookcase. Kirishima winced. Oof. Guess the turtles are gonna have to get used to labeling things as do not touch now that they're starting to have visitors. Well, Jones shouldn't be touching his host's property without permission, said Ida. I think Jones is a fellow case of ADOS, said Kaminari seriously to Mina, who gave an understanding nod. What is that? Asked Yaoyorozu. Attention deficit OOH, shiny, said Mina, pointing at Ida's engines, getting laughter from most of the room. Before Ida could start lecturing her and Kaminari about making fun of mental disorders, Uraraka quietly reminded him of the last time he tried lecturing Mina and Kaminari on bringing fidget toys to class. At the reminder of his own ignorance on the subject, he clamped his mouth shut with a blush while Uraraka gave a thumbs up to Mina and Kaminari, who both returned the gesture. While Splinter tries getting rid of him, Jones tries getting the guys to help him find whoever's behind the graffiti. The others say it seems too much like a setup but Jones claims it's a matter of honor and bushido. Leo corrects him, with even Raph siding with his brothers to Casey's disappointment. While Aizawa and a few others slightly cringed at Jones' mispronunciation, Present Mike had a sheet-eating grin and couldn't wait for the next time he saw Edshot to ask him if he practiced bushido like real ninjas. Gotta admit, I agree with the turtles, said Kirishima. While Jones's motives are manly, they need to take the threat seriously until they know exactly who and what they're dealing with. Bakugo nodded begrudgingly, acknowledging how stupid it would be to fall into a trap over some threatening pictures. Aizawa gave a satisfied nod. Good to see the hothead and his impulsive friend are learning, he thought. Upon noticing the TV setup, Casey makes himself at home on the couch with a slice of pizza, oblivious to the turtles' looks of incredulity at the unwanted guest. Casey Jones is the thing that wouldn't leave, said All Might in an over-the-top spooky voice. Gee, glad I don't know anyone like that, Aizawa said sarcastically, shooting a glare at Present Mike. Hey, Namuri's not that bad, said Mike, holding back a chuckle while his tired friend rolled his eyes. Back at Foot HQ, Stockman introduces 2 Foot Tech ninjas and explains their armor gives them enhanced strength, speed and stealth capabilities, the 2 demonstrating by fighting and 1 even turning invisible. May gave a whistle. He may be a pompous butt, but I gotta admit Stocking's babies are pretty cool. Oh, come on, Hagakure shouted. Why can they turn their suits invisible but I have to run around naked? Karzan paused the episode, knowing this was gonna be awkward. While several faces turned red, Nizu, face now blank, slowly turned to look at the 2 teachers who had allowed their underage student to perform hero work and training in nothing but a pair of boots and gloves for over half a year. Given the genuine looks of shock and embarrassment on Aizawa and All Might's faces, he wasn't sure whether to be angry that neither were aware of such an issue until now or relieved that neither were perverts. Miss Hagakure, your homeroom and heroics teachers and I will discuss your costume after this episode, said Nizu. After getting stiff nods from Aizawa and All Might and an okie dokie from the invisible student, Nizu's easy smile returned and Karzan resumed the episode. Stockman says he was able to create them after studying a small sample of the artifact they found in the East River, revealed to be the shredded remains of a robotic body, and starts saying he should have access to the whole thing before being forcefully grabbed by Hun and brought back to their MSTR. Despite Stockman's guarantee the FTN will be enough to deliver the turtles, the MSTR reminds him of the price he paid for failing him and warns him not to do so a second time. As Midoriya was quickly sketching the artifact shown close up for the first time, a shudder was shared by many at the villain's threat and Stockman's look of horror. Wonder what the nerd'll lose this time, Bakugo wondered out loud. Dude. What? Back in the lair, after Casey ignores Leo's hint that it's getting late, Mikey tries getting him to leave by loaning him some DVDs. Unfortunately, he decides to watch them there but breaks the DVD player when it doesn't open. He then goes over to bug Don but then tackles Raph and the 2 start wrestling while trading insults and knocking things over. Having finally had enough, Splinter asks Raph to go with Jones above ground, much to the delight of both. Did it look to anyone else like he mistook the stop button for eject? Asked Tokoyami. Either way, that does not give him the right to destroy his host's property, said an outraged Ida, chopping furiously. Yeah, not cool, Jones, said Uraraka. It wouldn't have happened if at least one of them had the ball to tell him to take a hike, shrugged Bakugo. Kirishima rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I get the turtles don't want to be rude, but Jones is the kinda guy you need to be blunt with. While roof hopping, the two follow the sounds of spray paint and find a couple purple dragons tagging a wall with a dragon eating 4 turtles. While fighting 2 of them, a third gang member sneaks off to make a call before Raph knocks him out along with the others. Guess Jones got what he wanted, said Izuku. Gotta admit, that tag looks sick, said Kaminari. Tokoyami nodded. A shame such talent is being wasted on petty crime. Raph then spots who the gang member was calling, 2-foot tech ninjas. They turn invisible as Raph and Jones charge at them and are knocked back by the invisible ninjas. Raph quickly deduces they're using cloaking devices and tries jumping one as he sees one running through a puddle only to be grabbed himself. While Raph struggles, Jones sprays the ninja with spray paint and hits him in the head with a hockey stick, knocking an orange lens off. And these guys are supposed to be professionals, Hagakure scoffed. Seriously, why bother going invisible if you're gonna give away your position by running through puddles? Truly shameful from those claiming to be warriors of darkness, said Tokoyami, shaking his head. Jones tries hitting him again but is blocked and both he and Raph are thrown into some scaffolding, knocking them both out. The ninjas drag them both out but take Raph and leave Jones for the gang members. Before the dragons can do anything, Jones suddenly wakes up and sprays them in the face with spray paint. As he runs away, he picks up the lens that was knocked off the ninja. Raph then wakes up strapped to a table with a machine poking at him. For a split second, Nizu's eyes narrowed at Raphael's current situation, reminded of his time before UA, before he was even seen as a sentient being deserving of the same rights as those who would strap him down and poke and prod him for answers. He was quick to shake off these thoughts and reapplied his neutral smile, but his paw still shook slightly as he drank his tea. Hun then appeared, admiring Raph's sayas and asking who gave them to him. With a smirk, Raph answered, "Yo mama," to which Hun replied by throwing the sai on each side of his head. The room erupted with laughter and cries of "OOH" and "DMN" at Raph's reply, with Bakugu and Nizu laughing the hardest and even Aizawa's shoulders shaking from suppressed laughter. "Oh, that is classic," Present Mike said, wiping away a tear. "Yeah, but I'd have gone with Joe," Shinso said, hoping someone would catch on. Kaminari smirked. "Joe who?" "Joe mama," Shinso smirked back, which caused a snort from Jairu and another fit of laughter from Kaminari. After crushing Raph's communicator, Hun asks what he is. Back at the lair, Splinter and the remaining turtles are back to practicing when Casey comes limping in and knocking over the bamboo sticks and the turtles again. "Donnie should really install a doorbell," said Ojiro. "Or sensors that turn the lights on whenever someone exits the elevator," said Mei. "Or they could pay attention to the loud noise and bright light as the elevator opens," said Bakugu. When asked where Raph is, Casey says invisible ninjas got him. Though Mikey's skeptical, Casey shows the lens he picked up as proof. "Yeah, 'cause the concept of invisible ninjas is SOO crazy, right, Mr. Giant Mutant Turtle?" Present Mike asked, sarcastically. While Don looks over the device, Leo tries calling Raph to no avail. Casey, in a fit of rage and grief over blaming himself for Raph's situation, then starts destroying various pieces of furniture. While Don can't get a tracking signal from Raph's cell, he starts recalibrating the scanner to find the invisible ninjas. While several people found Jones' way of coping with his grief funny, others like Momo and Ida were horrified. "Why are they letting him do this?" Ida asked, incredulously. "Well, old but usable furniture isn't exactly hard to come by in a city like New York," Uraraka shrugged with a giggle. "Besides, would you want to be the one to tell him to stop?" asked Izuku with a smile. At that, Ida just sighed in defeat as his friends laughed. Back with Raph, Hun is interrogating him, asking who he works for and what planet he's from. While Raph works on loosening one of his wrist restraints, he distracts Hun by asking who he works for. When Hun then threatens him with a buzzsaw, Raph frees his hand and punches Hun in the stomach and then puts a gas mask over his face, leaving him dazed. Raph then uses the buzzsaw to free himself and grabs his things before leaving, revealing he's on a yacht before jumping off and swimming back to shore. "He seems pretty convinced Raph is an alien," said Uraraka. "Maybe the enemies the Foot Leader was talking about are aliens? That'd explain the robot corpse from last episode and the sword," said Izuku. Bakugu scoffed. "Really? You idiots think aliens are involved? Hey, if mutant turtles trained in martial arts exist, why not aliens? Besides, do you have any better theories?" "No, because I'm busy trying to watch Raph's badass escape." While Stockman is furious Raph got away before obtaining a DNA sample, Hun says he let him escape to lead them to the other turtles. We then see Raph make it to shore and the wet footsteps of a foot tech ninja following him. Hun then warns Stockman his FTN better succeed. "Yeah, I'm calling bullshit," said Shinso. Blondie's just making sure Stockman gets the majority of the blame for his screw-up. Yeah, I'm not gonna deny it was always a backup plan, but he knew their leader would blame Stockman for the failure if it was his tech ninjas who failed, said Shoji. Back at the lair, Donnie is not only getting a faint signal from Rafa's crushed cell, but also from several of the foot tech ninjas following him. They decide to find Raph before he unknowingly leads the foot to their home and stop them by using heat sensor goggles to find them. They then split up, with Casey and Mikey above ground while Leo and Donnie go below. We then cut back to Raph running through the sewer while still unknowingly being followed until he stops at a large area with a whirlpool in the center. "Oh, come on, RAPH!" Bakugo yelled. How is he not hearing all those splashing footsteps behind him? All Might sighed. "Young Bakugo, have you ever been in a sewer?" No, why? Then please stop acting like you'd be any more observant than young Raphael. I believe Aizawa can vouch for me when I say it is much more noisy than you'd think. With a nod from Aizawa, Bakugo huffed and sunk in his seat. Leo and Don then leap down and kick two of the ninja, much to Rafa's confusion until they are then thrown around. Casey catches up to them and realizes he forgot to mention how strong they were. We then see Raph trying to fight but failing and getting dazed. "Geez, Rafa's looking like Balboa," Kirishima said, getting questioning looks. "Oh, come on, nobody here's seen one of the manliest movies in history?" While the turtles go to help, Jones uses a golf club to hit some sludge on the ground towards Raph. It lands on the two ninja, revealing their location so Raph can kick them. Once Don reveals where their cloaking controls are, Leo disables the last two and Don knocks them down. They think they're done until they hear Casey yell and we see him being dangled over the whirlpool by a FDN. The ninja demands they drop their weapons, which they do, not noticing Michelangelo sneaking along a pipe above the ninja. Mikey then jumps down, knocking the ninja and Casey toward the whirlpool, but Casey gets saved by Donnie. "And once again, Mikey saves the day," said Mina. "But he nearly got Jones killed," Kirishima pointed out. "Yeah, but I'm sure he had faith in one of his brothers. Or he was feeling a little vindictive for what he did to the DVD player and most of their furniture." After throwing the remaining foot tech ninjas into the whirlpool, Casey considers crashing at the lair, but the turtles quickly offer him a ride home and Mikey offers to tuck him in and read a bedtime story. Kaminari snorted. "I said it before and I'll say it again, Mikey's hilarious." Back at Foot HQ, Hun, Stockman and several foot tech ninjas are meeting with their MSTR, who is angry at another failure. Stockman tries blaming Hun, but the MSTR blames his FDN for failing to follow through on Hun's plan. At a gesture of his hand, two FDN drag Stockman out of the room. While watching Stockman being dragged away, many were wondering what he'd lose this time. While not voicing their thoughts, some guessed a hand while others, mostly the teachers, guessed the use of his legs. When Hun reports Raph didn't know anything about their enemies, the MSTR thinks they can be useful to him. As a few started to stand, Carson cleared his throat and several students were surprised to see the episode still going. In a dark room with three people in purple seats, a man in a trench coat wearing sunglasses and a gold medallion enters and reports to the three their enemy has discovered their presence. The three MSTRs, who have the same color hair and voice and each saying part of the sentence, then ask about the turtles. The man says they need more information and his MSTRs say to only engage if they find out they're working for their enemy and neutralize them. The man then bows and leaves. The silence the room found itself in was broken by Uraraka. "If they're not aliens, I'll drink a literal gallon of Mina's strongest acid." While Nizu would love to be part of this discussion, he has more important matters to attend to concerning his invisible student. After gathering everyone concerned in Hagakure's room, much to Aizawa's and All Might's discomfort as they sat on the edge of the student's bed, Nizu stood on his student's small, pink table and clapped his paws together. "So, who would like to explain to me how we allowed a student to train and perform hero work wearing nothing but a pair of boots and gloves for over half a year?" Though Hagakure moved as if about to speak, Aizawa stood from the bed and bowed to his student and principal. "I take full responsibility, sir," he said, still bowing. "It was my job to approve the students' costumes when they arrived and I made incorrect assumptions. When I opened hers, I saw the gloves and boots but assumed the bodysuit was invisible and could have avoided such a mistake had I read the contents of the case. I can only apologize to you both and promise to be more thorough in the future." With a grunt, All Might stood and bowed as well. "I am also to blame for how long it took for this issue to come to light," he said, blonde bangs dangling more so in Hagakure's direction. "As the heroics teacher, I've overheard some of the girls joke about young Hagakure's costume and like Aizawa, I made incorrect assumptions instead of talking to my student. I too beg your forgiveness, young Hagakure, and promise to be more observant." Hagakure started waving her arms frantically. It's really no big deal. I was training like that for years and it's not like anyone can see anything. Would you still be fine with your costume if you were exposed like Jones did to that foot tech ninja? Asked Aizawa. Or what about being forced to carry someone like Mineta? Even if he never returns to the hero course, he could still be injured as a civilian. While she seemed uncomfortable with the first point, she violently shuddered at the mention of that little perv pressed against her bare skin. Nizu sighed before smiling. While I am disappointed this error was not brought to my attention sooner, I am happy to say there is an easy solution. As you know, Miss Hagakure, Mr. Togata had a similar problem concerning his quirk and clothes. He overcame that problem with his hero costume thanks to a fairly recent discovery that combines the costume with the hero's hair fibers, thus making the costume react with his quirk. I'll call the same company he used to see about getting you an appointment. Hagakure moved like she was still unsure, so All Might put a hand on her shoulder and looked where he assumed her eyes were with a smile. If you're worried about losing your hair, don't be. Young Togata told me a hair manipulation quirk was used to get over 5 meters of his hair and he left with the exact same hairstyle he went in with. Hagakure sighed as her shoulders relaxed. So long as I won't be bald. It's not like anyone would even know, both teachers thought. With Nizu making the call on Aizawa's shoulder, the group headed back downstairs for the next episode. We open with a group of purple dragons, including their leader, Dragon Face, breaking into a store as part of the initiation of a purple-haired girl named Angel. While the rest loot the store, Angel looks on until Dragon Face hands her the bag of money and says she has one more test. Huh? She kinda reminds me of my cousin, thought Shinso. A shame seeing someone so young turning to crime, All Might said sadly, getting nods in agreement. Aizawa and Nizu, however, took note of her brief look of uncertainty as the dragons robbed the store. A few students noticed too, and while their thoughts about her varied, they hoped this was a sign she wasn't beyond saving. While the dragons try sneaking out the back, Mikey kicks Dragon Face and it's revealed the turtles and Casey were waiting for them. When he tells the others to attack, Dragon Face locks himself back inside. The Mikey then quips about how green beats purple every time as they take down the dragons. Shinso sighed. Well, he's not wrong, he then smirked at Izuku. Yet. Izuku nodded at him with a challenging smile. So not manly, Kirishima muttered at Dragon Face's behavior. While Angel makes a run for it, she's soon caught by Casey, who after taking off his mask and revealing the two know each other tries telling her she's making a mistake. She says the dragons are her family, and when Casey brings up her real family, she snaps at him and says it's her business. He says it becomes his business when she starts breaking the law, but says she still has a chance to quit since she hasn't been fully initiated yet. She refuses, saying her final test will be tomorrow, and then hits Jones and hops a fence, saying she can take care of herself. When the turtles arrive, Casey explains he promised her grandmother he'd look out for her and refuses to let her become a purple dragon. Unless her grandmother turns out to be a terrible person, it seems like we're dealing with a classic case of teenage rebellion, said Mike. And you call young Midoriya a problem child? All Might smirked at Aizawa, who rolled his eyes. Jones later tracks Angel to a purple dragon underground fighting arena. He watches as members give a 3-finger salute to the bouncer before being let in. After doing the same, Jones is let in and sees an initiate get KO'd while the crowd cheers. Jairu snorted. Wow, top-notch security. Pretty safe bet the turtles would have no trouble getting in given the fact they only have 3 giant, green fingers. Come on, there's no way anyone's that stupid, said Kaminari. Did you not see the mask the guy was wearing? Angel is then announced as the next initiate and does well against her 2 opponents, but Jones decides to step in when he sees one sneaking up behind her. He's then hit and grabbed by Hun, who recognizes him through his mask. As he throws Jones around the ring, Angel sneaks off, horrified. After knocking Jones out, Hun orders him to be locked up. Gotta admit, Angel had some pretty good moves, said Uraraka. She probably could have handled those guys even without Jones jumping in. Izuku nodded. She definitely has talent. Hopefully seeing what Hun did to Jones is enough of a wake-up call to discourage her from wasting it. In the lair, Don's working on a remote control system for the battle shell. Curious, Mikey sees the remote, oh, no, thought some, while others smacked their foreheads, knowing where this was going, and presses a button, causing the battle shell to speed haphazardly around the lair, nearly running over the turtles and Splinter until it crashes into a wall. While Splinter calls the battle shell a testament to Don's mechanical skills, he also never wants to see it in their home again. After Mikey gives a half-hearted oops, Don smacks him in the back of the head. Thank you, Purple, Bakugu smirked. And they just got new furniture after Casey's last visit, joked Mirio, shaking his head. Mikey. Why? Mina questioned, sounding disappointed. I blame Donnie this time, said Jairu with a shrug. He should have known better than to leave the remote where Mikey could grab it. Back with Jones, he's chained to a wall and covered in bruises, ranting about how he'll take them all down when Hun pays him a visit, antagonizing him by reminding him of how he burned Jones's father's store, to which Jones responded with, "At least I had a father." Oh-ho-ho DMN. DMN, Jones. Funny how often the leader of a gang called the Purple Dragons ends up getting burned. Hun tells him the dragons are having a brawl to decide who gets to kill Jones. After he leaves, Angel drops down from the ceiling, apologizing and promising to get Jones out but can't pick the lock. He instead tells her to go to the warehouse at the corner of Eastman and Laird and ask for Raphael, which she does and meets the turtles. Tarzan gave a small chuckle at the address of the warehouse. When those that heard looked at him, he just shook his head, knowing no one else would get it. "I'm glad Angel came to her senses," said Toru. Ojiro nodded. "I just hope she and the turtles get back before the Dragon Slugfest is over. Then again, being a little late would cut down on the number of opponents they'd have to worry about." "Not a bad idea. It's not like it's supposed to be a death match, so there's really no rush," shrugged Aizawa, seeing Ida struggle not to point out how unheroic a tactic that is. Taking the battle shell to the Purple Dragon hideout, Raph is complaining about his disguise to Mikey's amusement until he's given clothes of his own. Once all the turtles are dressed, they follow Angel into the arena, glad it's only a 3-finger salute to get past the guard. "I was joking," Jairu said incredulously while the rest of the room burst into laughter. "Huh. If only all villain hideouts were this easy to infiltrate," laughed Mike. "Good thing Hun didn't warn his guards about not letting anyone green in. Hell, I'll bet Nizu would fool them wearing his normal outfit with a hoodie and sunglasses." Even Aizawa couldn't stop himself from snorting at the thought of Nizu in a hoodie and acting gangsta. "They might as well have just worn t-shirts that read, 'Not a turtle,'" chuckled Mina. Once inside, Leo noted the exits and the amount of armed guards and asked the others to try to avoid a fight, only to realize how futile a request that was. "TT. It's like Blue doesn't even know his own brothers," said Bakugu. While impressed with Leo's scan of the room, Aizawa had to agree. Hoping the turtles would avoid a fight was like hoping Bakugu would apologize to Midoriya. Hun then announces the fight will be a free-for-all cage match to decide who will rid them of Jones, who is restrained and dangling upside down in the cage. He's then hoisted up into the rafters while the announcer is asking for takers, stating the honor of the dragon is at stake. "Like those thugs know a DMN thing about honor," Ojiro scowled, getting nods of agreement. When Angel says she knows the way to the catwalk, Leo sends Mikey and Don with her to free Casey while he and Raph join the match to make sure the crowd is focused on them. When Raph questions the plan, Leo says besides not having a better idea, Raph needs the practice. "Leonardo does realize he's speaking to Raphael, right?" Todoroki asked. "If anything, he needs to practice avoiding fights," said Aizawa. While the fight begins and Leo and Raph are doing well, though maybe a little too well in Rapha's case, Angel uses a spotlight to blind the two thugs guarding Jones so Don and Mikey can knock them out. After he's freed, Mikey gives Jones a bat, bringing a tear to his eye. "So manly," thought Kirishima. "Seriously, even FING Rattail doesn't recognize them," complained Bakugu when Hun was shown watching the fight. "I think it's been established the Purple Dragons are not made up of the greatest minds of their nation," said Nizu. "They're not even wearing shoes." When Raph gets distracted by Leo complaining about his clothes, he's grabbed and spun around until he's sent flying out of his clothes. The audience then burst into sarcastic bouts of shock. "What? No way. It can't be." Hun then rips the door off the cage and focuses on Raph, grabbing him until Leo jumps on his shoulders and gives him a double ear clap. "Discombobulate" silently echoed throughout the room. Donnie and Mikey then leap down and hold off the other dragons when they try joining the fight. Inside the cage, Rapha's blows seem to be doing nothing against Hun and he's backhanded into the bars. Leo then slices a loose piece of the cage above Hun, knocking him down. Pop quiz: what could Raph have done differently? Toru was waving her arm in the air excitedly. Ooh, I actually know this one. He should have gone for Blondie's tiny legs to knock his top heavy butt down. Aizawa nodded. 5 points to Hufflepuff. After throwing the piece of cage at Raph and Leo, Donnie and Mikey jump in and knock Hun against a cage wall. Enraged, Hun then brings the cage down on them all. As the turtles are getting up, Hun grabs Leo's swords. Before he can use them, he's tapped on the shoulder and turns around to see Casey, who uses his bat to knock Hun out and into the bleachers. "Foul ball," Present Mike called out. "Oh, it's foul all right," said Uraraka. "Weird seeing spectators trying to avoid catching a foul ball," joked Ciro. When more thugs start surrounding them, Dawn uses the new remote to have the battle shell burst into the building, scattering the thugs. May was laying on her stomach with her head propped up by her arms, grinning. She was glad Purple got his baby to work for him. While the turtles get in, Casey's stopped by Angel from using his bat on an already down Hun. She's then taken home to her grandma and Jones is invited inside for pie, much to Mikey's disappointment. Pretty good episode, said Shoji. Yeah, but now I want pie, complained Mina. Yeah, specially made by my grandma, said Kirishima. She was always so manly in the kitchen. Sato smiled. Not sure I can compare to Granny Kirishima, but I wouldn't mind whipping up a pie or two. Just make sure you're done before the next episode, said Karzan. The epic two-parter, The Shred Dash, Karzan stops as he notices the title of the next episode. Never mind, take all the time you need.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.